What is happening out there, Rotoscouts baseball fans? Let me tell you a tip about broadcasting. Turning on the microphone always helps. It's a last-minute decision here. Just happened to notice I always tend to glance down because you guys have seen me start these shows on mute before. But I managed to notice in my usual microphone check that we weren't yet on, so you might have seen me just hit it just as the show is starting. But welcome. Friday show. Hope your Fridays are going well. Happy Friday to you. Hope the week wrapped up well. Weren't on yesterday for that afternoon slate. Fully covered at the site. Was up early and had everything up live pretty early, but didn't end up jumping on for a morning show. Didn't seem like there were a lot of people hanging out looking for that one. So we bypassed that one, but good to be back here to wrap the week up. We've got a really interesting slate today. It should be a fun one to talk through. I think it's a nicely balanced board where we've got a lot of premium pitching options, reasonable value plays through the middle, especially on DK where there's, the two pitcher need, and then some really interesting spots for bats. So it should be a good balanced slate. And it's one of those, kind of just rolling the dice. Anything can happen in some of these spots type slates, as much as anything can happen any day in baseball, as we know. But it should be a good one to talk through. We'll pull up the stacks board here as a way to get started, as we've been doing recently. Just kind of giving away the stacks board lately. This is behind the paywall at Rotoscouts. Also just giving away free first weeks if you want to jump behind the paywall. I know everybody here is probably already familiar, but the offer, the promo code, been scrolling across the bottom of your screen. We've also got the pitching picks contest going on, and happy to report we did have two correct picks on the 11th. That was Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. It was Sean Burke for both people. Meech and Andy both had Sean Burke, who put up a very solid 7 innings, 9 strikeouts, I want to say. Crossed our threshold of a quality start and 8 strikeouts. Haven't had any other correct picks so far in the handful of days that the contest has been running. Some very good picks. Some guys have come very, very close. Missed it by a strikeout on a couple of them. But I think it's a good contest. I'm kind of liking how the board's working out. Win yourself a free month of Rotoscouts. We might end up, this might take through September to get through. So you might end up just picking this up as your free month for the beginning of, let's say, October, as not only is football already well underway, in addition to playoff baseball will, of course, be covered for DFS, but you'll get the beginning of hockey season, the very beginning of basketball season, or at least some preseason content for basketball. It's going to be nuts. There's a lot going on over the next few months, so no time like the present to try and win a free month of Rotoscouts content that's going to cover all of that. Regular prices, you guys know, under $1 a day at all times, but let's give away the stacks board. It's been staring you in the face as I've been ranting about this. Hopefully you've been focused on that and all the interesting things that it's revealing about the slate rather than listening to me try and pitch you something that you've already definitely known about for years because you've been coming here, like Cujo, like Andy GPS, like Antonio. Good to see you guys. Appreciate everybody who shows up every day. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate everybody who finds us for the very first time. But do definitely hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to. And come on back. The rules for the contest up there are they have to enter in a comment after the video. Whether or not you enter the contest, do me a favor. Come on back if you like the show. Just leave a little comment on the video. It does actually feed the algorithm pretty handily. And that's how a lot of new people have found us this year. Anyway, the Atlanta Braves playing really interesting numbers pretty much across the board in a spot against Brandon Pfaadt that people, I don't think they're going to overlook it because they come in third by Vegas total. It's not like they're unobvious. They're topping my projections. They're also topping the probabilities of ceiling games via Fangraphs Game Sims that we've added to the stacks board if you haven't been here. 23.5% probable going over 8 runs, 10.7% probable going over 10 runs, the only team above a 10% probability. Got a couple other teams right there with them at low 9s in the Yankees and the Rays, the other two top-ranked teams on the board. Yankees are actually number 1 on FanDuel. If you look, it's a little bit different. That's pulling up through the home runs, mostly for the Yankees. Home run pick of the day comes from the New York Yankees. Multiple guys above the magic number against Shane Bieber and what he's been this season. They're looking really interesting. They pull in 6th by Vegas total. I don't think it's the New York Yankees showing plenty of power against a very vulnerable starter. I sincerely doubt that in that game, and it's an important game in Toronto, that they come up under-owned. But maybe if people rush off to get, let's say, a slightly more interesting looking on the Vegas total raise, if they rush to get the teams in that game out in Sutter with the Rangers and the Athletics. Both teams are highly ranked, but they slip a little bit, not only on our board, with the Rangers facing a quality lefty who, outside of one or two slips, has been pretty good at limiting power and doing it in that ballpark. And we've talked a few times about the effective Athletics pitchers' ability to shut down good teams. Lefty for that Rangers squad is not going to be ideal. And it's having an impact on their projection slip a little bit, but their value is fine. But where it really has a notable impact, I think, is in the long tail. Just 14th and 15th by probability of a ceiling game. So there's a lot going through that first rank Vegas total where they're pulling in was it a 5+? 4.87 implied total. So nobody even pulling 5, by the way, on this board. But there's a lot more probability in this game looking like going 3 to 6 runs than going out to the gigantic score. Not to say that it can't. The situation ballpark-wise obviously tremendously favors that, as we know, in that ballpark. But the Sims are showing a little bit of a underwhelming quality to those Rangers, and I think it's backed up somewhat by the 14th ranked spot that they find themselves in against Gage for home run upside. Take that away, make them sequence lefty. Again, that's not the ideal setup for that team. And then the Athletics on the other side of it, just that diminished Athletics team against a okay pitcher in Kumar Rocker. He's no star, but he's also no slouch. So they just bounce off that spot a little mid-boardish compared to maybe that second-ranked overall Vegas total. And again, just looks like 4 to 7 runs rather than the 8 to 10 runs where they're coming up. I lost them. Coming up 12th across the board in those two categories. Plenty of upside for them to do it. Not a gigantic gulf between a 14.5% probability and, say, even a 19% probability, right? So know that we're talking about a range of like 5 percentage points when we illustrate these things. It's important to understand the actual context behind 5 percentage points there as we talk about it across the rankings and what the potential for a team to go off in that ballpark is. A lot of back and forth going on with this new context added to the board. Royals look good. Solid mid-board spot for them against a very gettable Grayson Rodriguez. Robert Gasser mostly pitching well in the show, but the Dodgers are the Dodgers. As much as they've been maybe in a little bit of a late summer swoon here, you would expect them to come roaring back. They look great in Sims. They're ranked 3rd by home run upside. Not great for value, but it's the Dodgers. Nice, solid. That was the Athletics. Seattle not coming up strong for Vegas total. They're facing Peter Lambert, who has been effective overall for the season, kind of like Kumar Rocker. Not great, not bad. They're just showing a little bit of interesting upside through that 4th ranking across the ceiling game probabilities. We know what the upside lurking in that lineup is. They just haven't been able to flip the switch in any kind of consistent way, basically up and down. But no time like the present to get started. Big series against the Astros. A lot of big series going on. Coming down to the last 40 games of the season. I think the Angels are interesting against the gettable Seth Lugo. There's plenty of power in that lineup. They come up with an interesting spike. They're also showing plenty of value upside. We know that it's a Starsy Scrubsy kind of lineup, but I think they're usable at worst, and they're a team that I'm sure kind of slips through the cracks. Showing very competitive numbers to at least, say the Royals, the Dodgers, as far as the probability of going for a ceiling game. Showing good value marks, reasonable projections. I don't love the home run upside. That's one minor ding if you're looking for one. That looks like a playable squad from the middle of the board. And I tell you what, I think I like it a little bit better than the Mets, who show up better for Vegas total. But you can see that red standing out in the middle of the board there, 19th by home run upside. Andrew Alvarez, think what you want of him, doesn't really allow a lot of premium contact, a lot of power upside. So New York Mets kind of mid-board team anyway. I think that's an appropriate spot for them. And you can see where they do show some quality. 15% probable to hit that 8-run mark, but they kind of die on the vine by comparison to some of the rest of the quality on the board when it comes to that 10 spot, that truly ceiling game. They do lose a little bit there. So I think that's revelatory a little bit about Alvarez's ability to maybe check the power. And then we just start hitting some mix and match squads. Know that there is total-wise, I should be highlighting over here, there's a lot of same going on through some of this and through some of these projection totals when I'm just averaging out the totals. There's a little bit more separation between the top 3 and then, say, the Rangers through the Athletics. And then everybody from the Mariners down to even probably the Rockies, the Astros, was a lot of same. So you can kind of pick your matchups through there. You can see that some of those teams are showing a little bit more of a spike, like the Guardians and the Rockies. I had to kind of put my finger on the Rockies a little bit to make them look appropriate against Landon Roop, who struggles with walks, but is otherwise pretty good, definitely keeps the ball in the yard. That's that up and down Rockies lineup that's not particularly great at exploiting the walk. I just don't think it's a great matchup for them to actually deliver on that. So that's a team where we're kind of influenced the other direction against that big total. But again, if Roop's just giving away free passes, they could stack up some runs there. I think the Guardians against King, fairly realistic upside through a few big bats, and probably like the Angels, not overly apparent. Michael King, solid middle of the board type pitcher. Giants I believe in a lot less, but that's a nice value spot if nothing else. You can see they're not overly probable to go over 10 runs, but reasonable to hit around 8. So when we're talking about an extreme just points per dollar value, particularly on DK, 6th ranked by home run against Kyle Freeland, who's a very gettable lefty, but lefty has a little impact on that team. There's a little bit of a back and forth conversation, but when you think about it, that probability of getting 8 runs and how it compares to some of these other squads through here, and picking off that points per dollar upside, now I can probably claw some probability of a higher end starter. I can grab some probability of a higher end other stack. So I do think there's value in considering the Giants through there, even though they don't look particularly strong in the back end of the stack board here. It's out of the lower ranked teams, Kyle Freeland is quite clearly the worst of these pitchers, including Steven Matz, Jesse Scholtz. And then the rest of those matchups, you're talking about going up against George Kirby, Yoshi Yamamoto, Gavin Williams, Chris Sale, and Garrett Cole. You do have the Brewers down in that group. Obviously, dynamite run creation engine that you can see a little bit of in each of these teams. The Padres do have a tiny bit of upside, but Gavin Williams is tremendous. The Diamondbacks are the one where if I had to say out of everything here, I disagree with the math, disagree with the sim. Which is a silly way of putting it. The Diamondbacks in that spot against Chris Sale. I see them as lower end. The projections see them as lower end. Vegas sees them as lower end. There's a lot going negative there. But I guess maybe some of that righty upside that's in that lineup, wrong way through the sim could get to Chris Sale. It just seems, those numbers seem a little bit high to me. And then the Blue Jays against Garrett Cole down toward the bottom of the board. Not much quality showing for them. Cole every now and again vulnerable to the long ball. But really interesting board, in my opinion. I think it's reflective of, very strong quality on the mound. And then just some of that back and forth through that athletics game specifically is really interesting there. The Braves, the Yanks, the Rays all probably do get pretty popular, chalky up toward the top. And then I think that athletics game is pretty popular. So you do want to probably work with, if you're building more than just a couple lineups, especially some of those mid-board teams. And we're going to get into how good some of them look. What's up, Rabbit Hole? Good to see you, buddy. John Hanza. Where's the offense? Nobody over 5.0. It's August. Yeah, dog days of summer, and no offense really kicking in. I mean, not in an ongoing, but today. It's, again, decent enough pitching board. Even some of the lesser pitchers are at least, like Kumar Rocker, at least competent. Put the weather board since I didn't really look. That's the other thing. It backed up my suspicion there. Our hottest temperature of the day appears to be 89 degrees in Houston, where there's a roof. 86 degrees in Atlanta. Maybe feeding a little bit of the offensive upside for that game as well. Slight wind blowing out to left field that doesn't really matter. But yeah, cool temperatures. A lot of spots coming in under 80 degrees. Upper 70s, mid 70s. So just a little bit of a limited day quality-wise, despite it being August 14th. No concerns weather-wise, though. Doesn't look like there's any rain in anybody's forecast, which is great. So we start the show up the top of the board. Or not start the show. We're 20. I've been rambling for 20 minutes now. But starting the Vegas board, the Nats going in to Queens facing the Mets. Mets pulling a more interesting total, 4.42 implied. But I question what that true upside looks like chasing the ceiling against Andrew Alvarez. He's pitched to a 3.76 ERA, has a pretty clean 3.77 xFIP under that, 65 Ks in his 69 and a third over 9 starts, and has been keeping the ball in the yard. He's allowed 2 home runs all season in 9 starts over 69 and a third. Some hybrid work in bulk relief outings as well through there. But that's at least demonstrable ability to miss the home run ball. Mets do have some power bats in that lineup, no doubt about it. I wouldn't take them away from anybody at a solid mid-4s total with some upside showing at least in that 8-run track. But yeah, reason to believe that they could get a little bit limited and maybe a little bit more limited than the field might see. Robert Stock going for the Mets. 2.91 ERA over 6 starts down on the farm, had 31 Ks in 21 and 2/3. Made a start the other day against the Pirates, went 3 innings, struck out 4, but walked 5, gave up 8 earned runs on 9 hits. Had a 5-inning outing against the Marlins on the second, struck out 4, walked 0, gave up a home run, 3 hits, was clean that game. That would be a usable day. Obviously, the other one would be a mess. Kind of split the difference as far as what you could give them here. I think you could play Nationals bats, but no James Wood. Just really knocks that lineup quite a bit. Just not what they were, and no Luis Garcia anymore either. The Orioles against the Rays. The Rays going with the opener follower. It's Steven Matz opening for Jesse Schultens. Schultens was ripping off some pretty decent starts down on the farm before getting recalled to at least make a spot start here. I give him 4 and change. I don't think you're really particularly looking to go to him. You're certainly not using Matz as the opener. Like the upside for the Orioles to maybe be sneaky for a little bit of power upside, particularly if you get like a Tyler O'Neill in the first inning against the lefty Matz if they allow that to happen. But they're not looking particularly great at that 3.61 implied total against the opener follower situation. And then coming back the other direction, the Rays, one of the top ranked teams, as you saw on the stacks board, at a 4.51 implied total against the hyper-gettable Chris Bassett. Pods and the guards. One of the better pitchers on the board in Gavin Williams. He's worked 144 and 2/3 in his 24 starts this year, 3.55 ERA and a 2.80 xFIP. So not even finding the results to match as high qualities as he's pitched. 185 Ks and 144 and 2/3 as well. So just tremendous on the mound. Going up against a very gettable Padres team that he's got checked down to a mid-3s implied total. Guards pulling a little bit more upside, as we saw just a minute ago on the stacks board. 4.01 implied total. Not dead in the water against Michael King. King pitching to a 3.37 ERA, but has a targetable 4.36 xFIP under the surface. 120 Ks and 136 inning and a third. Allowed 15 home runs over that stretch in 24 games. So he hasn't been pitching particularly poorly, but he's probably a little bit more vulnerable. Guardians could be a little bit sneaky in that spot on, a day where in recent weeks with all the heat and all the high totals, we would not necessarily be focused on that 4.01. So if you think about it publicly, maybe it doesn't stand out quite as much as it should on a board where nobody is eclipsing 4.87. Does play a little bit better today. So again, important to keep in mind the daily context of some of these numbers. Garrett Cole going for the Yanks, looking to shut down the Blue Jays. 3.69 implied total for Toronto. They have Shane Bieber answering back, making the Yankees look pretty standout. 4.41 implied total, one of the top-ranked teams on the board, top-ranked for power, home run pick of the day coming from the New York Yankees. I'll do this while I talk about the Yanks. The offense has obviously been in a total hole since like the beginning of June, but they do still have outbursts for power. They do still have plenty of high-end usable hitters who hit the ball very hard in that lineup. So maybe people do go away from the Yankees a little bit more than they should. Again, I'm very skeptical that would actually happen in this spot, but maybe with a couple other teams standing out by Vegas total and the Yankees kind of scuffling. Wouldn't use Bieber. Very interested in Garrett Cole. Not all that interested in that low-end Blue Jays team. Just the opportunity maybe that they could be low strikeout, frustrate Garrett Cole, base hit him to death, so on and so forth, as we always talk about with the Blue Jays. Interesting back and forth in results versus underlying metrics for Brandon Pfaadt lately. Over his last 8 starts, he's put up some decent fantasy games. No major ceiling games, but some solid, 30-15 type point games. 8 starts, a 1.32 ERA over that stretch, a 2.89 actual FIP, but a 4.56 xFIP, a 12.4% strikeout rate against a 3.8% walk rate. The walk rate's spectacular, but even with that, 12.4% strike is not going to get the job done. You're not going to go into Atlanta in, again, the hottest conditions of the day. The Braves pulling a upper fours implied total against with all the thunder in that lineup, and just allow them to make that much contact, and hope to come out of there with success. So I expect Brandon Pfaadt to get exposed here. That said, he has gone through stretches in the past where he's been a very effective, better than this major league pitcher. Not better than this in terms of the obviously incredibly low ERA over this stretch, but better than this for Ks, so on and so forth. But I like the Braves upside there. That is an interesting total. A lot of interesting bats in that lineup. Probably pretty obvious to the slate. Chris Sale on the mound for Atlanta, looking tremendous against the Diamondbacks. Lower threes implied total for them. Have confidence in Chris Sale, one of the better pitchers in baseball still. George Kirby hasn't exactly been peak through the season. 112 Ks in 132 innings over 22 starts, 3.68 ERA, 3.79 xFIP. Hasn't been bad, but strikeout down a little bit. It's been exposed in a few spots. Overall, though, still a very good starter when he's going right. Pitching in a big game here up against Houston. 4.22 implied total for the Astros. They're a mid-board squad going the other way. Would use either side of that, but I'm probably more interested in getting George Kirby against the Astros than their bats against him. I have a healthy respect for George Kirby. Peter Lambert on the mound for the Astros. You can see the low total for the Mariners, that 3.87 implied total. And you can see where they come in on the board. Again, 8th by projections, and I think floated somewhat by just that probability of going for the ceiling game. So if they're less visible to the slate, I think the scuffling all season Seattle Mariners against Peter Lambert may be kind of interesting here. So it's a team to keep in mind anyway as you're clicking together, maybe not your first lineup, but certainly your third, your fourth lineup, looking for something a little bit off the beaten path. I think the Astros could be it. And that is a particularly low total for a team that's struggled all year long with some very high quality bats in that lineup every single day. Royals and the Angels, solid totals on either side of that one. It's Seth Lugo. It's Grayson Rodriguez. No issues getting to either one of those teams. Angels stand out maybe a little bit more for power upside, but they're kind of a lackluster lineup outside of a few bright stars. I think the Royals a little bit more depth and quality in general, but an even up game on either side. Not particularly interested in either pitcher, but if I had to use one, I think it's Seth Lugo. And then we get to this ultra interesting Texas and Sacramento, I guess. The Rangers against the Athletics. The two highest totals on the board, 4.87, 4.74. Interested in going there, but if the slate's going to rush to it, again, with the potentially limiting factor that we're seeing through game sims for ceiling on both those squads, for believable reasons, for tangible reasons, I might be more willing to at least undercut and let the field have their share and try and win through some correct combinations of some of these other higher total teams. It's obviously a good spot. Great ballpark for hitting. Great implied totals. But if everybody and their brother's going there with some visible reasons not to, I don't know. Brewers coming in one of the lowest total, or the lowest total on the board, going up against Yoshi Yamamoto. That said, excellent Brewers run creation engine. It wouldn't surprise if they hung a few runs on him, even as good as he is. For the season, 2.65 ERA, a 3.46 xFIP. So when you talk about putting a few runs on him, it's typically going to be in that 3 to 5 range, even on a good day. Their extended output for or probability for putting up a big total is visible here, and more so in the 10-run plus as compared to a few teams ranked above them, some teams that look good, some teams that look bad. There's not much separation between their 6.33, obviously, and the ones lower, but even this 7.94, 7.48, again, a 1.5 of percentage, not exactly a gigantic gulf to close. But it doesn't look like they're an overly appealing team outside of a contrarian sense. You can get to a lot of very good players in that lineup who won't be owned in that spot against Yamamoto. And then Gasser Again, the Dodgers are the Dodgers. They've been a little bit underwhelming lately, but prime for an outburst at any time. 4 2/3 of 3-run ball for Gasser last time out. 3 strikeouts, 2 walks. That was against the Twins. 6 Ks the start before that against the Angels. 1 run on 4 hits over 5. Had a good 6-inning start prior to that one. He's been on a nice little tear. Last 4 starts, he's gone not particularly deep. He went the 6 innings against Colorado, but only 5, and then 5 twice, and then the 4 2/3. Had a really bad 3-inning start against the Pirates where he gave up 7, and had been pitching a little bit deeper into games earlier in the year. I don't think it's a point of concern necessarily, but just something maybe to keep in mind. He's at 67 innings on the season in the show. What are we looking at? Does he have minor league innings this year? Yeah, so he's got another 26 innings down in AAA. So 93 innings. The most he's ever thrown in a year is 137. That was 3 years ago, back in 2022. And then was limited, hasn't thrown more than 38 innings the past 3 seasons. So I think there is maybe some realistic expectation that the Brewers are going to be watching that down the stretch here. Just looking at like probably 5. If we get a good 5 against the Dodgers, there's probably not much reason to send him out for a 6th. So know that Gasser may be a little limited on ceiling, but the Dodgers not exactly destroying at a 4.32 implied total either. And then this low end game at the end of the night. It's the Rockies and the Giants. 3.59 implied total on the Rock side going up against Landon Roop, who, when he's going right, is excellent at keeping the ball down, keeping the ball in the yard, but has been scuffling with walks. He does have 123 strikeouts and 123 2/3 over 23 starts, 4.22 ERA, and a better xFIP under the surface. So potentially there is a little bit of upside in throwing him at one of the lower end teams on the road in baseball in a pitcher-friendly environment. Going the other direction, the Giants against Kyle Freeland. As we saw, there's a tiny smidge of potential on either one of these squads going up for a little bit of ceiling. More so on the Rocky side of it, going up against Roop, which I don't know if I fully agree with. Giants just meh against the lefty, but Kyle Freeland not exactly good. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel as we get over to the pitching board, which looks tremendous up at the top. It's nice when the board like almost fully aligns, just in a nice stream of color going down through those rankings. Just makes it so much more straightforward to talk about some of these spots. The good pitchers look good, the bad pitchers look bad, and there's a healthy middle. Love a slate like this. What do you guys like out there? What are you guys looking at on the mound? I got to figure out who I'm going to take off the board for the quality start and 8 strikeouts. I got to take one of these guys off the board on a slate like this. I'm going to take Gavin Williams off the board. You guys can have everybody else. If you weren't here at the beginning of the show, pitching picks contest is underway. We do have 2 correct picks on the board over the last couple of days. You have to come back after the show, leave a comment on the video. What you're trying to do is get to 5 correct picks before anybody else does. Again, the 2 leaders each have 1 apiece that just happened this week. What you need to pick is a pitcher who's going to book a quality start, 6 innings of 3 earned runs or fewer, plus 8 or more strikeouts. It's got to be a guy pitching on this slate tonight. You've got plenty of great choices. Again, multi-day contest, 1st to 5 wins, free to enter, 1 pick per person per day has got to come from this slate. Got to use the same YouTube name every day for me to be able to track it, and you cannot use the guy that I just took off the board, which again is Mr. Gavin Williams, looking pretty strong in the 2 spot, but only just barely, actually edging out by 6 1/100ths of a point on FanDuel, edging out Chris Sale. So took the right guy. Love both those options up at the top of the board. Tremendous pitchers in both senses against gettable teams in Arizona Arizona and San Diego. So no issue paying those prices for either one. And by comparison, on a day like today, where there's going to be a healthy chunk of the field just using these good, expensive pitchers, not as much necessarily danger of like, the 4-run day bends his value at that price somewhat. When everybody's spending up on pitching, that's less impactful. It's still present. It still has an effect, obviously, on his points per dollar that you're getting and so on. And he can get exceeded by other guys more easily. But if it happens to multiple guys across that same price spectrum, it's going to be less impactful. And there are some guys, good as they are, like Garrett Cole, like George Kirby, who every now and again can get got that way. Yoshi Yamamoto, just challenged by that Brewers offense. Little bit offset by projection from both of the other two guys at the top. And again, similarly priced on both sites. But incredibly usable, shares ceiling with everybody in, let's say, like that group. I think there's a ceiling offset for sure after you get through George Kirby. Not that Michael King, to a degree, gauge jump. Maybe Peter Lambert against that Mariners team on the right day. Maybe one of those guys vaults to that ceiling, but the frequency of it's going to be a lot lighter. You get good prices on that group, though, on DK, outside of, let's say, Lambert at 9,000. I don't like that price very much. I don't think he's particularly usable there. But what maybe that does, and it's probably the same thing on FanDuel, probably does knock Lambert's ownership down a little bit. He's at a very comparable projection to this entire group. So if he's very lightly owned, I already mentioned that I like the Mariners and that upside that they're showing for a potential ceiling game via the Sims. But there's been every reason in the world to attack them all year with pitching, and Lambert's been effective enough. So it's not terrible that he's priced that way. It's just not the right price. But it does have its value to us if it knocks his ownership down. Roop should be popular at 75 as an SP2. Jump, probably not going to be popular at 7 as an SP2 because of the environment there. And I think it's at worst playable. You can see how he's priced on FanDuel at 87. Not one of the highest prices on the board, but among the higher priced pitchers. Not to play spoiler for later in the show, but Gage Jump, 2.22% home run rate allowed on a 5.1% barrel so far, with starts coming here, with some starts in Vegas. It's over 14 starts now, 72 and 2/3 of 26.7% strikeout. He gives away too many walks, 10.5%, but he can punch his way out of trouble. Very strong swinging strike rate. 28.1 CSW is pretty solid. 4.46 ERA, but a 3.74 xFIP, 3.89 SIERA under the surface. And this team that the Rangers are throwing at him not only is limited somewhat lefty-lefty across their better bats, apologies to Wyatt Langford, but they also don't draw walks. Only Corey Seager's drawing a double-digit walk rate across this entire team. So his downside note with that double-digit walk rate, yeah, it could go against him, and these guys who don't particularly draw walks could wait it out and find one. But it's not particularly suggestive that that's going to happen. There's as much reason to believe that he'd be able to limit his walks today as that they'd be able to draw one. So I think Gage Jump probably going to be pretty low owned for that price where he falls on this board. I don't particularly need him on FanDuel, even though he projects out okay for a nice discount by comparison to the top of the board. I'm probably either just going to the top here, or like I'd use Landon Roop over him for 700 less against Colorado. I think that makes a ton of sense. Root for 500 more, also on DraftKings, by the way, makes plenty of sense, but is probably going to be more popular because people won't want this spot nearly as much as that spot. This is a good pitcher against an obviously bad team for a cheap price. Thought that one, I think, is maybe a high danger spot. As highlighted, overperforming, certainly over these 8 starts that he's ripped off. And even with that, striking out 12%, not putting anybody on base, but the Braves don't need that. Just allow them to make contact. There's a lineup filled with guys who make premium contact. I think Fott's in trouble at that 77, and let the field have that one. I don't think you get burnt by it too many times because he doesn't really put up ceiling starts. He could put up an okay value start, but even then, 77 is not exactly bargain bin. Odds are you get one of these guys through at a comparable or better start. I'm not going out of my way to get Seth Lugo, but he's in that same conversation at 6,900. Against the Angels, a lineup that has plenty of strikeout available for him. A team that would, you could say, do similar things to the Braves if they still had Adele, Soler. They're much more limited now. They've got two big bats in that lineup now, and then a lot of meh. Seth Lugo, when he's going right, is more than a $6,900 starter. So if I'm dipping down to this lower half of projections, I think there's a lot more compelling reason to consider like a Lugo, even a Gasser for 72, 500 less than Brandon Pfaadt, even against the Dodgers. There might be better reason to go to him. I think there's more possibility of a reasonable game with a few Ks. And there's a similar amount of danger, if not more danger, for Brandon Pfaadt. Again, the Braves are the only team pulling a 10% plus probability through game sims of going over 10 runs and a 23.5% probability of going over 8 runs. That's significant. Bieber against the Yankees, mostly a target for bats. Very, very cheap. Has had a couple of okay-ish type outings, but there's not a lot of there. There's not a lot of ceiling there. Rocker, maybe a bargain bin type dart at 65 on DK. For similar reasons to Lugo, certainly to the pitcher on the other side of that game. That would be why you would consider him lower end athletics lineup than we've had in previous parts of the season. And he is a capable enough pitcher with some pedigree. So I don't hate that one. And it's another one that the field isn't really going to be chasing. Everybody's going to be going to bats in that game. Andrew Alvarez, 5-6 innings of low run output, keep the ball in the yard. That's not exactly primed to BABIP anybody to death, succeed by on base. So sure, 6,200. He's as much a value dart as any of the other guys. I think Schulten's on DK at 6. Maybe you could have the conversation about. He's been just good enough down on the farm. I just don't love going to those opener follower combinations when there's such a big question mark about what the depth is going to look like. That is also just a better Orioles lineup than I think they get credit for. So I don't love that spot at 6. Robert Stock is probably going to give you enough innings to at least be relevant for the extreme discount at 5. I don't think he's necessarily in a great spot there against the Nats, but that is significantly offset price-wise. And he does have, as shown in a handful of minor league starts that I mentioned before, a little bit of strikeout potential. Grayson Rodriguez, I'm more looking to throw Kansas City bats at, and then these guys down toward the bottom just suck. Wayne Stark, appreciate you, buddy. It was like 15 minutes ago, but Wayne Stark said, hit the like button. This guy gives locks. Appreciate it. I try to call him out. Look, we're having a discussion, right? I think that's what the important thing is here, is just to talk through all these twists and turns and try and highlight good, the bad, the spots where it's just, hey, this is a pure coin flip. We get some of those from time to time, but I do try and take a position for you guys. Let me pull down lineups. Site will be updated after the show. The site is rotoscouts.com for anybody who's not familiar. Scrolling across the bottom of your screen, promo code TRYME, capital T, capital M, gets you a free first week on a weekly anytime. Jump behind the paywall, check out the projections, see what you think. Make sure you jump into the pitching picks contest as well. I've been highlighting that a few times already. Win yourself a free month of content at rotoscouts.com via any of those subscription vehicles, our regular weekly, monthly, quarterly plans. You get access to everything that hits the website, guys. So it's every single one of the 4 major sports, every single main slate. For football, we cover every single game and provide deep, deep content with written analysis for every single player, every single relevant data point on every slate. It takes me like 24 hours. So if nothing else, get behind the paywall for that. I think there's value in that alone. But football projections, pretty solid. NBA projections, NHL projections coming up right behind those as we get into the fall. Baseball ongoing through the playoffs. So a lot of value coming at you at Roto Scouts for the same under $1 a day subscription. One subscription gets you access to everything. Anyway, that was clunky. Nationals, 417 implied total. Beyond the rabbit hole I might go jump. Doesn't sound right when you say it that way, but yeah, I get you. Yeah, Gage jump, I think, is again, hidden option on the slate, if nothing else. You're going to pull him up, and it's going to be lower mid-single digits ownership, I would think. I don't expect he gets popular there. All right, 422. We're going to look to make a decent time through the game by game. Andrew Alvarez at 62, striking out 22%, but he's another starter walking too many. And the Mets are a team that have a few guys through the lineup that are solid, that look to draw their walks, that always have. So a little bit of a concern there. Alvarez does induce a solid swinging strike rate, though. The strikeouts that he's putting up right now are believable, with potential for finding a few more along the way. And again, the limiting factor here, he's given up 2 home runs all year in these 9 starts and some more work out of the pen, because he's inducing just a 7.9% launch angle out of on average, 4.6% barrel rate allowed. He does allow some hard hit rate, some exit velocity, but on an extreme low trajectory, as we've seen with the Framber Valdez's of the world, the ground ball pitchers of the world. It doesn't matter as much. You can get some well-struck balls through the infield, some screaming line drives, certainly on that kind of trajectory, and that's where the Mets upside would come from. That's where that mid-4s implied total comes from. But it has a clipping effect on their probability of going for that ceiling game that we need here. So it does knock them down a little bit. The most visible place is right through the home run model there. Nobody above even halfway to the magic number. Nobody even above a 4. And you've got some bats on this team. I mean, Frankie Lindor, Lou Bob, certainly. Francisco Alvarez later in the lineup. Dude's got a 16.5% barrel rate on the season. He was at 12-1 last year. He's a masher at the plate. We know that. He's at only a 3.33 in the home run model. So that one skill is very real for Alvarez. Could clip the Mets' wings a little bit. They're usable. They're affordable. They're not mispriced by any means. On DraftKings, they're downright cheap. Most expensive Met is Lindor at 45, which just in a vacuum for Frankie Lindor is just a silly cheap price. But everybody on the Mets is cheap. So I do think they're usable through that. They ranked out okay, right? Basically in the exact middle of the board. But again, the one glaring concern, that red stoplight that we're seeing in the home run column. I don't love that. And it's, again, if you weren't here earlier, it's very much reflected right there. They're okay, probable to go over 8 in the mix with some of these other teams on the, they're 10th ranked there out of the 20 teams. They're 16th ranked in that probability of going over 10. So they dip on the further down the tail you go. Stock at the 5,000. So those 2 starts, one good, one bad. And then the work in the minors. In the minors, again, 6 starts. A couple relief outings of 2 innings apiece as well in here. So 21 2/3, 2.91 ERA, 31 Ks in the 21 2/3. That's doing most of that work in high A, though. Only 2 of those outings were the last 2 were in AAA. This is a 36-year-old, though, with some innings in his life in the show. Over 59 outings, 5 starts, 83 1/3, 5.40 ERA, 4.76 xFIP. Does have a career 22.1% strikeout rate, but a 12.7% walk. Again, I struggle to really recommend it, but knowing that there's a little bit of strikeout potential for just 5,000, there is the potential to go 5 innings, get lined up for a win if the Mets do their thing against Alvarez. It's not DraftKings SP2 value bargain bin play off the board. It's probably not good, but it's very, very cheap. You do have other usable starters at very cheap prices, and you probably don't need to go that cheap, but it does help in certain ways with, lineup building, obviously. Nationals bats playable against, but they're with their big bat absent the lineup. It's a lot more problematic than it was earlier in the season. James Wood does so much for this team from that leadoff spot that it's just devastating for their upside. 417 implied total against a career minor leaguer is okay. Again, playability at the top, particularly among the lefties. CJ Abrams, downright interesting on any given slate. 29 homers, 23 stolen bases. Kid's a star at shortstop, so absolutely can go there. And then you pair him with very cheap offerings, so it helps with just what his price tag is once you consider like the 3-man average if you want to take a light sampling out of this squad. I think the next most interesting bat in this lineup is the 2-hitter, Abimelec Ortiz. Kid's got monster power. In a very limited sample so far of 31 plate appearances, even fewer batted ball events, 20.8% barrel, 54.2% hard hits, 4 home runs on the board already, a 355 on base to go with it. I actually picked him up in the Dynasty League the first time he got called up a couple weeks ago, and then he went back down. But he was mashing in AAA over 365 plate appearances, 18 home runs, had a solid 348 on base, a 253 ISO, striking out less than 20% of the time, walking just under 12% of the time. 24 years old, so was on track, age-wise for that level here on time. So there's a lot of reality to Ortiz. He's 2,300 at first base, 26 on FanDuel. If you're going to this team, that's a high priority bat. That, given the power upside, he comps fairly well with the other upside first baseman on the slate. He's not Matt Olson, obviously, but there is compelling enough reason that you could consider him at the position, especially with that monster discount you're taking on both sides. And then you get more mix and matchy. Brady House is okay. 11% barrels is interesting. 46.7% hard hits. He just it's very infrequent that he turns it into anything. 8 home runs on the board in 233 chances, carrying just a 299 weighted on base, but does have that interesting 332 xWOB under the surface that reflects the premium contact that he makes. But he also strikes out at a 28.8% clip, walks just 6.4% of the time, not really delivering in that department, not getting on base enough, and for clear reasons why. Dylan Lyle between the two is probably more interesting. He's more expensive, lighter hitter in general, but doesn't really strike out, just gives you more opportunity on balls in play. He also swipes bases if he happens to get on. 15 homers, 12 steals in his 500 plate appearances. Playable, but also not a great option. Just another outfielder at the absolute best for those prices. Isn't great. Kim Ruiz, a low-end, just bat-on-ball catcher who rarely finds success. He's a low strikeout, does have a 275, 311, 439 slash line this season, paying off some batting average on balls in play. But that's all it really is. There's not a lot of power in that bat. Jose Tena does make good contact, 8.3% barrels, 49.3% hard hits. It's only turned into 6 home runs, though, a 155 ISO, 313 weighted on base, a 306 xWOBA. So again, not a lot showing there, despite some okay batted ball events through there. 2,900 at second base is not a bad option if you're going to this team already, but he's not really a draw to this team. Nasim Nunez, if he happens to get on base, can swipe a bag. 40 stolen bases on the season says so, but very inconsistent as far as the bat. Not much of a hit tool, no power whatsoever. Jorby Vivas and Jacob Young down the bottom. Young's got a little bit of speed, but inconsistent getting on. Jorby Vivas just a mix and match guy. If you're going to the Mets, again, very playable Mets squad from the middle, but concerns about that ability to really book the ceiling around the power. AJ Ewing and Carson Bench, the 2 rookies, first and 5th spot in the lineup. Both very interesting. Both now getting on base in the 330s. Dynamite rookie seasons from those kids. 15 and 18 stolen bases, cross-category contributors. Either one of those guys in any given stack of Mets, absolutely. On FanDuel, it's probably more one or the other in the outfield because I want to leave some room for Lubab at only 28. I'll take shares of both guys. Don't get me wrong, but I think the best construction, the one that you should most commonly use between those two, is probably one or the other of the 2 rookie lefties. And then you've got Lindor, obviously, Bichette coming through the infield. And don't sleep on Frankie Alvarez. Even on FanDuel at 2,700, this team isn't offering you a first baseman anyway. So just take his power upside, even with Alvarez's ability to limit home runs in play that we've talked about plenty. Alvarez would be one. Frankie, would be one of the more likely Mets to hit a home run here. given his monster ability to put the bat on the ball. And he's only 34 where you do need catchers. He's a big-time play on this team if you're going to them on DK. 104 WRC plus on Ewing. Benj outperforming slightly at a 111. 345 xWOBA under the surface for Carson Benj as well. Probably the better of the two. But both guys, again, contributing in big, big ways. Lindor just missed a lot of time and some inconsistent results since coming back, but 11 home runs, flashing a little bit of power upside at a 9.6% barrel, 49.2% hard hit. Even if he's not hitting a home run here, one of the more likely guys to hit a screaming line drive or get one through the infield a couple times for some base hit upside and some correlated scoring. Bichette is plenty cheap. He puts the bat on ball consistently, 262, 309, 380. There's nothing special across his line really at all, but still very low strikeout, lower medium walk rate. So a lot of balls in play, and that's plenty fine for these prices at third base if you're going to this team already. And then down at the bottom of their lineup, Marcus Semien, Luis Lorenz, Jared Young. Mix and matchy through all those guys. The most interesting one is definitely Jared Young, 2,900, 2,500. There is power in that bat. 7 home runs and 232 chances so far. 8.5% barrel, 48.5% hard hit. Low strikeout as well. 18.5% strikeouts against 7.8% walk. There's quality there. But again, he's lefty-lefty for one thing. And we're, again, just limited by this. So many ground balls and low trajectory batted ball events that it's not a spot where I'm really home run hunting. And that does ding the upside for Jared Young, probably more than anyone else that we talked about in this Mets lineup. Even with all that, it probably still is Mets bats. Mets bats, Alvarez on DraftKings, Nationals bats, Alvarez on FanDuel, Robert Stock, I guess, or Robert Stock on DraftKings is the only place you would really want him, I think. And again, know that is 100% just based on, can you get me 5 innings for that price of basically any quality with maybe a few strikeouts along the way? And the answer to that question is yes. He did it not 2 starts ago. Orioles low total against the combo of Steven Matz and Jesse Schultens here. It wouldn't completely knock me out of my chair if the O's succeeded. They're pulling decent home run numbers against Schultens, who in 37 2/3, 2 starts in the show, is pitching to a 3.82 ERA, but a 4.62 xFIP, 4.23 SIERA. 18.3% strikeouts against 6.7% walk. Neither good nor particularly problematic in either category. 10.8% barrels is problematic, though, on a 19.2 degree average launch. The hard hits, the exit velo is actually pretty good, inducing weak and medium contact. So there's some back and forth there, but it looks like when we're making mistakes, we're making very loud, high launch angle, loud mistakes, leading to that 4.88% small sample home run rate that he's allowed. Just 8 1/3 pitched last year. Didn't really have the home run issue, was allowing some premium contact, reasonable comp for the barrel rate, but it's such a nothing sample, it doesn't really matter. Did find some interesting strikeout numbers again in that tiny sample last year. I think there's a little bit of talent here. Where's that minor league stretch? Oh, did I even grab it? I don't think I did. Matz, I think, would just be in here for an inning. Maybe we see a second inning out of Steven Matz, but it's unlikely. Particularly like if he goes through there and gets through 2 big righties, I don't know that they're going to send him out to face 2 more hard-hitting righties just so that they can have him pitch against Gunnar. That doesn't really add up in my head. Actually, bear with me one second. Yeah, all right, still that setup. Got nervous for the second that something had changed. So the O's, as low as that total is, there are still interesting players with some pretty visible upside in this lineup. When we consider the stacks board, they don't rank out particularly great by DraftKings points, but they look a little bit better on FanDuel considering they are the second-ranked home run team. Home run score a little bit better on the FanDuel board. But you can see where they just die completely in the game sim probabilities. And that is a low-end Vegas total. And this has been a lower-end team that has disappointed us time and again when we've gone to them for DFS. So plenty of obvious reasons to go away from the Baltimore Orioles here. Maybe it's better as short stacks. Maybe it's better as some FanDuel one-offs around some very cheap options through a lot of different positions here. But there is clear power upside showing here. And these numbers, again, are drawn against the righty Jesse Schultz for some of these big right-handed hitters, let alone Steven Matz. If you get Tyler O'Neill against Steven Matz, you get Christian Encarnacion Strand against Steven Matz. Again, unlikely. But if, there's big time upside there too. So I don't want to take the O's off the board. In fact, if they go completely under-owned across 150 lineups, it would probably be easy to get ahead of the field on them. And that would be a somewhat interesting proposition, even though they don't sim out great. Travis Duarte saying Tyler O'Neill and Alonso. Yeah. Both those big righties. And Encarnacion Strand is neither of those guys. He's closer to Tyler O'Neill, but he does have power that looks a lot like those guys. Ward not on the team anymore, Trav. He's a Mariner now. He was on the team. Wasn't hitting for power this year, but was getting on base and still is getting on base like crazy. But yeah, Alonso in the leadoff role for 51 for 36 on FanDuel, 26 homers on the board, pulling a 15 in the home run model, if that means anything to you. 10 is your magic number. 20 is double that. 15, you're halfway to double. And Encarnacion Strand right there with him, 14.51. He's hit 4 long balls in his 69 plate appearances. Wildly inconsistent guy, but maybe he's finally figured it out. Maybe whatever you need to make that leap from being a star power hitter in the minors to a power hitter of some competence in the majors has been made finally, because he's looking all right now. He's not striking out, 21.7% strikeout in that small sample, drawing a slightly higher walk rate. Again, nothing sample size, so 1-2 walks in either direction makes a big difference in that number, but at least he's doing it a little bit. 20.4% barrel in a handful of batted ball events so far. That's an interesting player who remains cheap. People are aware of him. He was a popular pickup recently, but very playable for the upside. And then you get quality in between. Jackson Holliday, the lefty, we've talked about quite a bit recently. He's getting on base at a 343 clip, a 106 WRC plus. If you can figure out how to hit the ball a little bit more consistently hard, and the numbers from the last 2 years say that he should, drawing a 13.9% walk rate this year, there's interesting strides being made kind of under the surface by Jackson Holliday. Really intriguing player who had an underrated year last year, particularly for counting stats for fantasy. Second base, 3,200, 2,700. Sign me up. Kobe Mayo for 35 for 27, 15 home runs and 307 plate appearances this year, carrying an 11.6% barrel, 48.1% hard hit. No consistency in his game, no reliability whatsoever at below average run creator, 98 WRC plus. But there's major thunder in that bat. He's going to be hitting third, so he is likely to see Steven Matz. And then you get to O'Neill at just 29-27. He's hit 10 home runs in 234 chances, including a recent surge where he's seen a little bit more playing time. This is a guy who's gone over 30 home runs in the show. Star caliber power. He's just never able to stay in a lineup for consistently long enough to get going. Gunnar having arguably a disappointing season. Bad slash line, only 19 homers on 94 WRC plus. Disgusting considering what the expectations for this player are. But still an uber talented guy. Monster lefty power against a guy like Jesse Schultz, who can clearly give it up. I like Gunnar's upside here. 10.53 in the home run model. And then there's Encarnacion Strand. And then you get to Leody Taveras, Carlos Narvaez down the bottom of the lineup, more mix and matchy. And then Colton Cowser, just a wild card on some premium contact upside. There's very realistic power. He had much better contact numbers in the last 2 seasons than he does so far this year. That's unlikely to catch up in the remaining 40 games. 9 homers, 8 steals, and 287 plate appearances off that kind of contact. It's not what we would expect. Last year, inconsistent numbers across the slash line, but 16 homers, 14 steals, and 360 chances. The year before was better. 24 homers, 9 stolen bases across 561 with a better slash line. But on any given slate against a vulnerable righty, that is a very good left-handed hitter. Schultz, this recent run in the minors, by the way, that I started to pull up and then stopped. Pitching to a 4.32 xFIP, 4.32 ERA over 6 starts, 25 strikeouts in 25 innings. 23.1% strikeout against a 5.6% walk rate over that stretch. 4.63 FIP under the surface, actual FIP, not X. Let a couple home runs down on the farm. Nothing special about it. It's just okay, better than he was earlier in the year in the show. But I think that's a targetable pitcher. And then the Rays look tremendous against Chris Bassett, who's pitched to a 14.2% strikeout rate, an adequate 8.4% walk rate, and has actually been pretty decent at limiting premium contact and power in his 10 starts. But he's got a 5.27 ERA and a near matching 4.98 xFIP, 4.91 Sierra, mostly shot. Too many guys on base via the base hit, too much contact available for a team like the Rays. That's just speaking directly to what this team does when they succeed and what they very specifically focus on doing. So his vulnerability plays right into their hands. Love the upside for the Rays to have a big game here. Yandy Diaz is terrific, getting on base, 371. Jonathan Aranda is right there with him at a 373. Dynamite table setters who both have a little bit of power in the bat, 17 and 15 home runs respectively. Xwoba's in the 350s against similar weighted on base. Everything is very real, very clear with those two hitters. Chandler Simpson in the 3 spot is an asset. He's worked his way back. 307, 334, 365 now. 33 stolen bases, getting on, getting involved way more consistently. All he needs to do is put the ball in play. He's got a good shot at beating it to first base as long as it's not caught in the air. 308 weighted on base that will continue to defy that 263 Xwoba because of that speed. Just he's the Flash. Extreme low strikeout, extreme low walk, just looking to put the ball on in play and set the table for a guy like Junior Caminero, who comes in at 6,300, 3,800. He's hit 35 home runs on the year. Monster power. You guys know that. No reason to oversell Junior. He's fantastic. Liam Hicks is a great pickup for this team. He fits right in with what they do. 9.1% strikeout, 10% walk, 368 on base, 16 home runs on the board, flashing a little bit of power. It's like they added another Yandy Diaz. Just terrific, terrific pickup. Low contact, doesn't make the contact that Yandy does, but finds tons of success just directing the ball around the field and has had that situational power this year. 125 WRC plus too. He's been tremendous. Victor Mesa Jr. stretches the lineup a little bit as well. 10 homers and only 174 plate appearances. We'll see what the consistency ends up looking like. A 39.8% hard hit is not great, but a 12.7% barrel is very interesting. It's basically a homer or nothing in most of these outings. Has a little bit of speed if he happens to get on, but he's not good at getting on base yet. 6 stolen bases with that 285 on base percentage so far. Ced Mullins, multi-time 2020 guy, 13 homers, 18 steals, just a wild card late in the lineup to throw a dart at. But if you're building multiple Rays stacks, very much involved. More so than I think Richie Palacios, even at second base, kind of an option. 5 homers, 10 steals. Does get on base at a 340 clip over the 289 opportunities. Just a 99 WRC plus in spite of that, though. Even as a wraparound play, it's less than ideal. Maybe here and there across a bunch of Rays stacks, but not in your handful of lineups type of approach. And then Taylor Wall's a mix and matchy guy that you probably don't want at shortstop. Rays bats, Orioles bats. Not really interested in pitching in this one, but it would be Jesse Schultz in this bulk relief role over Chris Bassett. And I don't think you want Steven Matz as the opener. Rabbit hole nose. Yeah, love that Hicks pickup. That was a sharp pickup for that team. Pods low total against Gav Williams, one of the better starters on the board. We won't spend too much time digging into the pods, but every now and again, I feel like when we don't talk about them are the games where they've connected. Guys have had just some upstart games. They've certainly been better over the last month plus than they were at the beginning of the season. There's usability through the pods, but I'm not really looking to attack Gav Williams and his 3.55 ERA and his even better 2.80 xFIP, 2.90 Sierra. 25.1 strikeout minus walker. Nice little shorthand there because he's got a 32.3% strikeout and only walks 7.2% of hitters. Induces a ridiculous swinging strike rate. He does allow some premium contact, something to be aware of. He's one of these aces that, yeah, you can get the long ball against him from time to time. 11.3% barrels, most notably, 46.2% hard hits, and over 90 miles an hour of exit velocity, just under a 4% home run rate. If you've been here before, you know the 4% is where you got a home run issue. So he's right in that range. But much like we've said about like Garrett Cole over the years, if there's nobody on base when that happens to you and it's a solo shot, it's a 2-run home run after you've gone 6-7 innings of high strikeout ball, it really doesn't matter as much. It can tarnish an otherwise gem of a start here and there. But ultimately, this is an absolute ace, well worth the money, essentially tied with Chris Sale atop the slate. So fire away against a very gettable Padres team. Michael King going the other direction at 8 at 9,200. Less relevant to the FanDuel board, maybe usable, but not even at a great price at 8 on DraftKings. Striking out 21.5 against the too high 9.8% walk rate, 3.37 ERA, but a believable 4.36 xFIP, 4.40 Sierra, backed up by that 11.63 strikeout minus walk percentage. It's just not good. What he is good at is inducing weak and medium contact. That's always been a skill of his. 32.5% hard hits, 87.3 miles an hour of exit velo. So the low home run rate that he allows, even on a fly ball trajectory, is pretty real. It's difficult to hit home runs against Michael King, but it's not completely difficult, especially because of the walks and the heavy rate of contact that he allows now. It's not that difficult to sequence against him, and it should be happening to him more frequently than it has this year. So plenty of reason to believe in a little bit of playability on the guards. 4.01 implied total doesn't make them look spectacular, but I already mentioned, given the low-end conditions of the day, the 4.01 after weeks and weeks of heat where people are seeing, 4-run total, that's not anything compared to, these 5 teams that are above 5 and all these upper 4s. It's not that day today. Yeah, you've got some upper 4s. You don't have a single 5-run team on the board. And the Guardians were showing a little something through those game sims. Right? 6th by probability, 18% probable to go over 8 runs. That's only 5.5 percentage points off of the top-ranked Braves in that category. It's noteworthy on this board, but talking about 5 percentage points in the grand scheme of things with how percentages work, it's not huge. 7.94, they're 6th by probability of going over 10 runs. One of the better-looking teams in terms of ceiling. So if King's downside comes back to bite him in the ass, the Guardians become a really interesting play. They're cheap. They're going to be low-owned. And I take back some of that because Jose Ramirez is not in the lineup. That changes things. Let me see if they caught up to that on the graphs yet. We do have the new confirmed lineup on graphs. Let's see. They're now, all right, this is important. The Guardians are now 15 point something percent probable to go over 8 and 6.2% to go over 10. So everything I was just saying, they have taken a significant dip with Jose Ramirez out of the lineup. Apologies for the now less relevant rant. They're less interesting now. That 401 implied total, they're more likely to come in that 4 to 6 type range now than they are to go for 8, 10. That ceiling became a lot less interesting. So if you're going to the Guardians in this spot now, King is still vulnerable for all those reasons, but it's a lower end situation. You're looking at Chase DeLauder. You're probably looking at Nathaniel Lowe, Travis Bazzana, get some of those key lefties in there, but Ana Martinez isn't much. Anel Janile maybe gives you a little bit at 27-25. Interesting rookie, 30 good plate appearances so far in this lineup, one of the higher ranked prospects in baseball. So definitely a kid you want to consider who would be a little bit probably under the radar from this team, especially if people aren't going here at all now. But just significantly less reason with them coming down in those ceiling numbers to really overreact to the Guardians. It doesn't really thrust King toward the front of the slate. I do think at 8 again on DraftKings he's playable. 92 on FanDuel. He projects out okay. I mean, it's not a bad spot right there. So definitely playable, but I think I want any one of those guys more and probably would rather go cheaper if I'm going down the board. But maybe marginally more playable now for King. If you go to the pods, Tatis is obvious in the top spot. 12 home runs, 28 stolen bases, 353 on base, a 116 WRC plus, 362 xWOBA under what's now a 338 actual. Rumors of his demise, as maybe disappointing as the home run output might be, greatly exaggerated. That's still a fantastic option on any given slate. Second base eligibility still on FanDuel for only 3,400 makes him dynamite if you go to this team. Jake Cronenworth, I don't love the idea of Tatis second base and then Cronenworth first base. So if I get Cronenworth in a lineup with Tatis probably going into the outfield. Cronenworth's playable in that spot, but he's not really a two-hitter. He is a reasonable on base option. So if you're looking at it as Tatis goes deep to set the table, then yeah, to start the game off, then yeah, all right, Cronenworth sets the table for Manny and the guys that follow. But ideally, probably want Manny Machado in that 2 spot, or maybe even the lefty. If you want a lefty there, you go Jackson Merrill in that 2 spot. Bet as his on base has been this year. I just don't really fully believe in Jake Cronenworth being that guy. Machado has pulled his act together, 23 home runs on the board, but still a really inconsistent slash line. 330 xWOBA supports the upside against that 307 actual. Still room for Manny to put an even better final 5-6 weeks on his season and look even better. Has a shot at 30 home runs even after that bad start. So not completely dead either. Still reasonably cheap too. Definitely pulled his head back above water, right? If we're going back to our drowning analogy. It doesn't look pretty, but he's got his head above the surface now. He's all wet. He's coughing, but he's alive, and he didn't drown. He didn't go to the sea floor like we were worried about. 4,000 for Ty France, 2,900 for a guy who's been successful over more than half a season now. 17 home runs, 295, 349, 525. Some significant changes in his approach and his swing at the plate. Really interesting bat. 10.6% barrel, 48.5% hard hit, not expensive enough. If you're going to this team, Ty France is a very compelling argument at first base. And that would be the reason you don't necessarily want Jake Cronenworth there, or yet another reason. Jackson Merrill, 43 for 32, 19 homers, 23 steals, entirely playable around counting stats. Tons of upside, tons of premium contact available. Just no consistency through the slash line, but we know he's a better player than the front end of that would suggest. That's backed up by his xWOBA. Campusano, mix and match quality catcher with some power upside for sure. He makes significant contact at the plate. He's only 3,500 on DraftKings. You do worse at catcher. Less appealing on FanDuel where you just don't need him at that position. Gavin Sheets, mix and matchy with a little power upside, 15 homers and 385 chances. Nothing special. Does draw walks, low strikeout, so playability. Even if he doesn't homer, you can get him on base, but it ultimately amounts to a 314 on base. So nothing special there. Bogey, Luis Renifo, mix and match guys at the absolute best at the bottom of the lineup. Talked about this lineup in not significant detail, but Kwanzaa slap hitter who is finding marginal success around that 366 on base, but it only leads to a 104 WRC plus. If you're going to this team, he's interested for his correlated scoring ability, and he's not at all expensive, so he's playable in the outfield. But everything cratered around the Guardians in the interest. DeLauder's been getting on base like crazy. Has some pop in the bat we saw early in the season. Just a very successful 443 plate appearances. An interesting bat, and one of the reasons still to consider them. Martinez, that stretch earlier in the year was overrated. 12 home runs that came in a bunch. He is much more the 245, 277 front end of that line. Lowe had an interesting stretch with the Reds. 13 home runs on the board at 301, over 301 plate appearances, a 332 on base percentage, a 115 WRC plus, 342 xWOBA, basically backing up that 348 actual. We've seen strong stretches like this from Nathaniel Lowe in the past, doing these exact things, hitting from moderate power, getting on base. So very playable in the heart of the lineup. And then Bazzana, another high-end rookie. A lot of flashes of his talent through the season, around those 9 home runs and 17 steals. The consistent on base at 336. Just a 319 weighted on base, though. Just a 300 xWOBA. Does have that 106 WRC plus. He is paying off run creation. but needs to improve through some consistency categories. Just a 36.6% hard hit rate, I think, most notably. He is limiting strikeouts. He is drawing walks in his rookie season, though. That's a very interesting option at second base if you're going Guardians. He was minutes ago more interesting. I mentioned Angel Gennaio, again, one of the top prospects in the game, very, very cheap. And then not a one of these guys is particularly interesting. Petey Halpin hasn't done anything interesting in 123. Patty Bailey's never really been a threat at the plate. And Brian Rocchio here for defense. Glad we could say that again. He did have that nice stretch at the plate, but he was never that guy. Gavin Williams, easily. It is probably still Guardians bats slightly outpacing the Padres bats, but I don't love it. It might actually be Michael King now. Yeah, I think it's Gav Williams, Michael King, and then Guardians bats slightly above the Padres bats. But Gav Williams the big talking point in this game. John Hans is saying King's a lot more interesting. Averaged 6 Ks in his last 4 starts. It's not a huge sample size. I'll pull up the game log again, though. The game log where I can click into it on actually on graphs. 6 strikeouts against the Astros, decent 5 against the Diamondbacks, 6 against the Rockies. Definitely a little help from that bad lineup. They also put 4 runs on him that day on 6 hits, 2 home runs allowed. I would say what's actually interesting there is that he's allowed at least 1 home run in each of his last 3 starts and in 4 of his last 5, including a 2 home run game against the Rockies. Some uncharacteristic power coming with that little uptick in strikeouts, but that's actually not even really an uptick. You can look back from April 19th to May 18th, he struck out 39 over 35 and 2/3. This recent stretch of the last 5 is 28 and 28. So that was a slightly better stretch. He's always had the strikeout in his game. Was better for Ks when he was a reliever. But what I'm looking for from King, if I'm going there, and again, it's much more of a consideration, I think, on DraftKings. I don't love how that FanDuel price plays against the top 5 starters on the board. You could get the 5-6 strikeout game, certainly. This is not a particularly high strikeout lineup. A couple guys that really help offset the average, and then even their lower end bats. Ignore the 6.7. That's a nothing sample so far. But your guys like Nathaniel Lowe, 25% is your worst mark. So it's not the best target in the world for strikeout anyway. I think King, you're looking more to get through, give me 6 innings with a nice angle toward a win if the Pods can pull something off against Gavin Williams. But with Williams checking that, not necessarily angling you toward a win bonus for your 8,000 on DraftKings. I think it's another limiting impact on the upside of the King play. But again, incredibly usable through the middle, just not one of the more appealing guys on the board. There's a definite shelf there. These 2 are on a tier all by themselves. These 3, I think, are on a tier. And then King maybe just on his own, on like a middle tier. The 15th and a half floor. And then you do hit, the jumps, the roops, the more wild card, lower end options of the board. I'd rather have King in this spot, certainly, than Brendan Pfaadt against Atlanta for 77. Projection doesn't look all that dissimilar, but I think there's a lot more danger, a lot more downside, and not as much upside here. But yeah, it's that not really a big outlier, the 6 strikeouts a game over the last few. That's in line. Garrett Cole, 9,700, 10-1. Solid projected. Share ceiling with the top of the board. 26.4% strikeout against 5.2% walks. Right in line with where you would expect. 21.28 strikeout minus walk. Ace level plus. 3.35 ERA with a 3.57 xFIP. Allowing a little bit of premium contact as usual. A lot of hard hit, a lot of exit velo for that kind of fly ball trajectory regularly. So will get burnt by the home run ball every now and again. But this Blue Jays squad not exactly hitting the ball out of the yard all that frequently. Kaz Akamoto leading the team with 24 long balls. The next guy in this lineup is George Springer with 12. That is not a power pack team. So less threatening for Cole that way. They do come with the downside. We always talk about that peskiness of just all these guys that limit strikeout very effectively and just put a lot of balls in play. Can frustrate even a pitcher as good as Garrett Cole, but he's also good enough to go in there and punch some of those guys out where they're not usually striking out. It's not a ton of walk in their game. There's not a ton of walk in Garrett Cole's game, so not a lot of freebies being given away here. Just a 369 implied total for the Blue Jays. My hope would be that Cole goes a little bit lower owned by comparison to the Chris Sales and so forth of the world because he's tremendous. Absolutely happy to have him at either of these prices. Shane Bieber just looks like a target for Yankees bats, striking out 16.4, walking 11.8, 5.48 ERA, a 5.05 xFIP, and all this premium contact and power available for these Yankees bats that look pretty tremendous. So we're just stacking up Yankees here, and you've got some nice options through this lineup. Bad as they might have been over the last month plus 2 months since Judge has been out, and missing other pieces as well. Stanton been out most of the season. No Cody Bellinger the last few weeks. Problematic, but they added a few interesting pieces at the deadline. They've got very interesting bats still healthy in this lineup, some of whom have underperformed, some of whom have been tremendous through the year with some recent slippage like Ben Rice because he's asked to carry the weight of the world now. Top to bottom and loaded with lefties against a bad righty. This is an interesting spot. Trent Grisham in the leadoff role for the Yanks, 44-33, has 15 home runs. Monster for premium contact. When he's going right, gets on base like crazy, doesn't strike out very much, 16.9% this year, 11.9% walk, improved over last year in the strikeout rate. Walks are down slightly, on bases down significantly, but missed a fair amount of time as well, has a 342 xWOBA under his 320 actual. Very interesting upside for Trent Grisham. Any given slate doesn't get his due ownership in most cases with the Yankees stacks. Ben Rice is the current hitting star on this team, 32 long balls on the season, also gets on base at a 351 clip. Tremendous hitter, 15.3% barrels, a 12.3% walk, also carrying an 18.18 in tonight's home run model into action. Not the home run pick of the day, though. He would have been a good one, but it wasn't him. Luis Garcia Jr. at an 11.91, also not the home run pick of the day, but he's at 24 on the season and an outstanding continuation of last year's breakout, just building on what was a great year last year, up to a 12.3% barrel from the left side. Lefties in this is in Yankee Stadium, excuse me. Lefty power against a bad righty. Definitely interested in some Luis Garcia. 49 positional conflict on DraftKings with Ben Rice. That really, really sucks. Second base eligible on FanDuel for only 31 is dynamite. Jazzy Chisholm, also not the home run pick. You play him at third base alongside Luis Garcia at second on FanDuel. Love the build there. Second base, perfectly fine for Jazz on DraftKings at 45. 17 homers, 31 steals. Counting stats are still dynamite. Everything has been really disappointing across the board as far as any kind of consistency goes, but still one of the higher ceiling players on any given slate, just considering the skill set. Elliot Ramos, interesting for premium contact and power, 13.1% barrels, only 9 home runs off that this year in 336 plate appearances, but he's gone deep more consistently in years past, and that's just a really interesting bat this team went out and got and has been playing regularly in the heart of this lineup for very cheap. So realistic power, and he, by comparison to all the lefties we just highlighted, will be under-owned within Yankee stacks. Another player who always goes under-owned and shouldn't, Ryan McMahon, 9.9% barrel, 47.5% hard hit in what has been a mostly terrible season for him. 10 home runs, 218, 284, 376 in his 293 plate appearances, just an 86 WRC plus. No consistency at all, but major source of left-handed power for a very cheap price at third base. If you're not going to Jazz, you pivot over to Ryan McMahon, take the big discount, and buy something nice in another spot in that lineup. Austin Wells, you're just looking for the one good piece of premium contact. And then George Lombard's been really interesting since coming up. If nothing else, the kid plays outstanding defense, running all the way across to cutting off the second baseman to field a ground ball the other day. It's ridiculous. Very refreshing to see at shortstop for the Yankees. Long live King George. Blue Jays side of things, Brett Bateman, just a mix and match quality slap hitter with some speed up the top of the lineup. Nathan Lukes gets on base at a 319 clip this year, but is better than that historically for some on base skills. Low strikeout, Medium walk rate so far this year, a lot of balls in play, but not particularly well struck. Just two contact-focused hitters up toward the top of the lineup. Vladdy Guerrero is a lurking threat on any given slate, but he's only hit 7 home runs. He's also just been wildly inconsistent compared to who he used to be, but still very low strikeout. Reasonably high walk with upside for more walks. Still a threat to Garrett Cole, and there is still power in there. You can never convince me otherwise, even though he hasn't really found it. Springer, again, second on the team with 12 home runs, but an ugly season underway. Ugly 306 xWOB under his 313 actual, right at the league average 100 WRC plus, not what they're paying him for. Alejandro Kirk, a playable catcher anytime you go to this team, but not a really compelling reason to go to them. Andres Jimenez is a mix and match shortstop with interesting counting stat upside, but nothing more. Kaz Akamoto does put the barrel on the ball regularly, as does Jesus Sanchez, who we talk about a lot on this show. He's hit 8 home runs in 261 plate appearances, low strikeout, medium walk rate, a lot of well-struck balls in play from the left side. I think Jesus Sanchez is an interesting candidate for that oddball home run against Garrett Cole, but it probably doesn't come with much else as far as a fantasy score. So if you want to pick off a cheap 18.7 FanDuel points, that might be your guy, but it's probably not going to come with a lot of floating upside from the rest of the team. Maybe Akamoto hits one ahead of him. 7.05 for Akamoto leads the team handily. And then Ernie Clement is in the bottom spot in the lineup. Not really interested in Ernie Clement, just a little bit of BABIP skill there. And that really, second, third, fourth time through the lineup, you're talking about 3 guys now that are just contact focused. And arguably Vladdy is that as well. Garrett Cole, Yankees bats, Garrett Cole, really either way. Both look pretty tremendous here. Yanks were actually top-ranked FanDuel. I'll go Yankees bats on top because they're also the top-ranked home run team today. So Yanks bats, Garrett Cole right there with them. Blue Jays bats, Shane Bieber, not really on the pitching board. He's been mostly a disaster. D-backs, 344 implied. Braves, 469. Braves, big time point of interest on this slate. Brendan Pfaadt, 85 and 2/3 over 11 starts this season in the show. Has a 3.36 ERA, including that one, whatever it was, against a 2-something actual FIP that I rattled off earlier over the last 8 starts, where he's looked outstanding in some results, but under the surface, exposed by a 4.59 xFIP matching Sierra. Extreme low strikeout, 15.2% over the 85 and 2/3 on the season, down to 12% over that strong stretch of ERA-based output. Has been decent for the year at limiting premium contact, though. 35.4% hard hit, just 88.6 miles an hour of exit velocity, 7.7% barrel, reasonable output there. But the Braves are a hard-hitting bunch where if you're going to allow them to just put their bat on the ball, then 5 guys in this lineup have double-digit barrel rates. They're going to find their power. And he's not exactly a ground ball trajectory pitcher. He's not an extreme fly ball pitcher either. 11.5 degree average launch. Where was he last year? 12.5 last year, 14.1 the year before. And you can see 3 and change as far as the home runs. So there is plenty of power here for the Braves. 2 guys in the lineup above the magic number in Drake Baldwin and Matty Olson. Ronnie Acuna, only a 7.53, but we know there's more power available than that with Acuna when he's going, right? Just one of the best hitters on the entire planet. Michael Harris, solid mark for power. He's hit 20 home runs already this year. Ozzie Albies has 20 home runs on the board already this year. Austin Riley maybe gets to 20. He's hit 15. He's shown sparks here and there where it's, he's going to get it started. He's getting it going, getting the engine turned over. He's pushed the barrel rate up nicely, up to 12.6. Still a long ways to go to get to previous years of quality, but he was mired at like 8 and change for a while there. But this is a low-end Austin Riley season. There's not a lot of faith on any given slate that he's actually going to deliver for us. But on the ones where he does, there's monumental upside for increasingly cheap prices at third base. So 41.29. I'm always interested in some Austin Riley. And if I'm just home run hunting and upside hunting against Brendan Pfaadt with a team that I'm hoping goes a little bit lower on than they ought to in this spot, I'm going to go to some of the guys down toward the bottom, like an Austin Riley, that we've succeeded with in big ways over the years, that are going to be lower owned than their peers in that lineup, even among the people who do go to this team. And they offer other options like that. Mauricio Dubon, if nothing else, is playable across multiple positions for a fair price. I don't love him at short or even in the outfield, where he's really just another outfielder. He's more interesting at second or third on FanDuel, but he's easily playable. He's always been a contributing utility man type. 94 WRC plus is about who he is, though. But low strikeout, put a ball in play, get on base for a big Mike Yastrzemski home run. Yaz hasn't really found much consistency either this year. 9 homers, 234, 318, 401 over what's now 305 plate appearances. But we've had better years than this from Yaz in the past. He does have a little bit of lefty power in that bat that's somewhat visible. 43.9% hard hit, 7.6% barrel. Those aren't good numbers, but they're also non-tragic. Jim Jarvis, just a mixer, wouldn't want him really at shortstop. Oh, and by the way, the Diamondbacks are going to be facing Chris Sale, one of the top-ranked pitchers on the board on any given slate. Chris Sale is obvious. 24.9 strikeout minus walk rate, a 2.20 ERA, backed up by a 2.86 xFIP, 2.88 Sierra. It's Chris Sale. Don't overthink it. D-backs bats against. They were showing that little spike at the end of the long tail, but I question the actual validity of that one. There is right-handed quality throughout this lineup. Everybody except for Corbin Carroll going to be hitting right-handed against Chris Sale today, but it's Chris Sale. That just doesn't matter as much to me. Geraldo Perdomo, if you're going to the D-backs, very interesting at 42, 3,000 on base skills on display at a 359 on base. Carrying 330 weighted on base against near matching ex-Wobo 107 WRC plus. Very cheap, but again, facing Chris Sale today is not great. Corbin Carroll, their star in the outfield, 18 homers, 16 steals in a decent but not outstanding season for who he is. Reasons to have expected it, though, that we've talked about throughout. Still putting up good premium contact numbers, affordable at worst at those prices for his skill set. Gabby Moreno, very interesting catcher on DK at 44, slashing 305, 383, 453. He is on base all the time. Big part of the run creation engine at the top of this lineup. 51-33 in offensive pricing on Ketel Marte, but he hasn't had an outstanding season. 21 homers is all right. The slash line's okay. 330 weighted on base is above average. His 351X is where we want him, though. Room to grow. Might put a final stamp on his season with a strong 6 weeks, but again, facing Chris Sale, not the best day to get that started. Nolan Arenado overperformed in some stretches this year. Did get himself out to 18 home runs, probably going over 20. I wouldn't have expected that. I don't think it's very real. Just some incidental cashing in good situations. But he has hit those home runs. You're not paying any tax for them. So if you want to target Chris Sale with a guy with a swing that's unlikely to catch up with Chris Sale's stuff, there's your man. Ildemaro Vargas, Tim Tawa, less interesting. And then the two guys down here, Tyler Locklear, reasonable upside for some premium contact that he's shown throughout his career coming up through the minors. Reasonable average upside, lower strikeout stuff, regardless of those last 2 seasons in very small samples in the show. Does have some ability at the plate. Might end up being just like a quad A type talent. Ryan Waldschmidt is now a higher, more highly regarded prospect. But just a couple seasons ago, Tyler Locklear was a top 100 guy himself. So no reason to write off either one of those guys if you're going to this team. But you're not going to go to the Diamondbacks against Chris Sale so that you can get to those two. Chris Sale, Braves bats, much like the Yankees, they're right next to each other up at the top of the board. I don't really want to recommend Brandon Fonte, guys, but he is kind of sticking there in like the middle of the board. Those prices, right? I've just talked about several times already. I'd rather have a handful of these guys than him. I really don't like that spot. And I don't think you have any kind of ceiling on it, given the just general absence of strikeouts. I do think I have to rank him above the D-backs bats against Chris Sale, though. Again, the rankings basically mean nothing. It's just a way out of the game. So Brandon Pfaadt, D-backs bats, but know that I don't want to play Brandon Pfaadt. We got a ways to go here. Taking our sweet time through this one. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for me. See if we got the Mariners lineup in. Might as well. Make sure you enter the pitching picks contest after the show. If you're not taking advantage of the free week, try and win yourself a free month. First to 5 wins. Leaders only at 1 apiece. There's 2 people tied at 1. Nobody else has gotten one right yet in the few days this has been running. What you need to do is come back after the show, leave a comment. Got to use the same YouTube handle every time. 1 pick per person per day. Free to enter. Can't use my pick of the day, which was, who did I take off the board? Gav? I think I took Gavin Williams off the board, right? Somebody confirmed that for me. I forgot already. You're picking the guy who's going to book a quality start, which is 6 innings of 3 or fewer earned runs plus 8 strikeouts. We had a home run picks contest that went fairly well. This is like what I consider a home run out of a pitcher, right? We're looking to pick that off. It's like 1546 says Reds or Marlins. He likes the Marlins. Those teams aren't on this slate. That's why I didn't have them top of my head. I was like, wait a minute. I would rather, I think, have those Reds against Sandy, but I'm not really looking to target either one of those pitchers. I have a pretty healthy respect for Chase Burns and Sandy Alcantara. Pretty terrific himself. Why not look at like some probably underpriced Tigers against Sean Newcomb? Look pretty interesting. Like Gleyber Torres, Dylan Dingler, Eduardo Valencia hitting cleanup for very cheap. And then down lineup like Max Clark hitting 9th for cheap. Newcomb's super gettable there. I don't completely hate his White Sox going against Jackson Jobe. I don't love the Pirates against Jake Bennett, but I don't particularly mind the Red Sox taking it as a kind of a wild card shot against Bubba Chandler there. Looks like a 4.2 implied total for them. Yeah, I don't particularly like the either side of that Marlins Reds game. You're going up against the two best pitchers. I'm sure those teams will be low owned on that slate. But I think there is probably more upside going, in my mind, through the Reds in their home park here. But didn't project that game. Don't really have much just looking at it on the surface level. Just because Sandy's going to allow them to put some bat on ball. He's not as good as he is. He's not the highest end strikeout pitcher. So that ballpark works a little bit more against Sandy to me on a bad day than it does against Chase Burns, who's going to be missing a few more bats along the way, I think. Burns definitely comes with, some more believable downside as well. But yeah, that's not the game I'm looking to attack on that 3-gamer. Yeah, pitcher's game for sure. Where were we? Okay. Oh yeah. The pitching picks contest there. So yeah, make sure you come back and enter that. Any new lineups that have come in, that would have come in, have come in. Mariners did come down. Getting back to the game we were on, Mariners lineup is now in. Brock Rodden not available on either side at the bottom of the lineup, but we're not really sweating that. They're coming in at a sub-4 implied total against Peter Lambert. He cost $9,000 on either site. 23.5% strikeout against 9.3% walk, puts him just at 14.2 strikeout minus walk. It's only okay. Speaks to the 4.40 xFIP, the 4.16 Sierra under that sparkling 3.09 ERA. He's been pitching over his head for sure, but what he has been pretty good at is limiting the premium contact despite a fly ball trajectory. 18.8 degree average launch is a trajectory that'll put balls in seats, but 37.2% hard hits, just 88.9 miles an hour of exit velocity, and not coinciding with those big launch angle events. So 6.8% barrel rate, 2.54% home runs, or is pretty good. So does have a little bit of a limiting factor on the Mariners' power as far as what's visible there. They've been underperforming their talent throughout the season. We've talked about quality of, guys like Cal Raleigh, Josh Naylor underperforming, Julio Rodriguez underperforming his talent basically all season long. Randy Arozarena has been right there. Dom Canzone's been right there as far as actually finding some quality output for this team. But by and large, they've been scuffling. They're showing a little bit of interesting possibility through the ceiling games against Peter Lambert, who again, through his expected numbers, through how he's actually pitching, through a little bit on the walk rate, is not the guy he looks like on the surface. So there's a lane through which we can use the Mariners to hopefully attack the slate at lower ownership and get some upside around guys that we know are better than they've been, that we know we can find some success with, at least on an any given slate sense. Cole Young at second base is usable, but he's more of a correlated scoring piece, just a mix and match guy in stacks. That said, adequate season, 55 runs, 52 ribbies, a 320 on base, a little bit of a table setter, 110 WRC plus, but also entirely skippable in this lineup. Arosarena is where you want to start. 49.33, getting on at a 370 clip is dynamite. Has the power and on-base skills to hold down that 2 spot. Has a little bit more power even than those 16 home runs might suggest. We've seen him go deeper more frequently and put better bat on ball in years past. But he's been fantastic carrying this team. 141 WRC plus on the season. Tremendous. 19 home runs and 357 chances out of Dom Canzone, putting this kind of bat on ball, which he has always done. That's just his skill set. I don't really understand why he's only 3,000 on FanDuel and 35 on DK. That is nice and cheap. Critical bat in this lineup if you're going to attack the righty here. Julio at 46, at 33, still getting a little bit of credit for who he is in those prices, but those are not close to his skill set. He's a little bit closer on FanDuel. 19 homers, 15 steals. You take the name off the jersey at these prices in the outfield, these are better than just another outfielder type numbers. So you're just getting the right price on what he is doing. And we know that his upside is way higher than that. Same thing's true for Josh Naylor. He's only 3,300 now, 3,000 on DK. That is more than correct for a first baseman getting on at a 331 clip with 10 home runs, 23 steals, a 106 WRC plus. That's a perfectly fine player for that price. You just got to ignore the fact that it says Naylor on the back of his jersey and then credit that fact back when you think about what the actual ceiling here is. Brendan Donovan's always been a serviceable mix and match piece through multiple positions with low strikeout rates, medium walk rates, puts a lot of balls in play. Had better premium contact numbers last season. It's only 126 plate appearances this year, but he's been getting on base. He drives run creation when he's succeeding, and he's very cheap at third base. Cal Raleigh's Cal Raleigh. Dude hit 60-something home runs last year. Victor Robles, a playable outfielder. Having a kind of 126 plate appearances this year. Low end for on base. That's really where his upside's going to come from. Tremendous speed last year. And only amounted to 114 plate appearances last year. That's right. The uptick was 2 years ago. Stole 34 bases and 295 plate appearances while slashing 307, 381, and 433. And then just has not been able to stay in this lineup. But at least 7.5, 6.5, 7.5 interesting guys in that lineup. Playable upside and probably invisible to the slate at that low total. 4.22 implied for the Astros against George Kirby. In a lot of ways, I think I'm less interested in the Astros. Kirby's very, very good. 3.68 ERA, 3.79 xFIP, 3.91 Sierra. Kind of underperforming talent a little bit this year. 20.6% strikeout against a 5.2% walk. All still manageable numbers at worst. But the downturn comes, you can see it. 4.21 ERA last year, but had a spectacular 3.25 xFIP, 3.39 Sierra. So underperformed a little bit last year. 26.1% strikeouts, though. That's a big part of the dip is the loss of strikeout rate. It doesn't really come on a major downturn in swinging strikes. We're not walking extra hitters here. Just losing a little bit around the edges. But I think it's something you can claw back, particularly any given slate. Not that these Astros are a great strikeout target. They definitely have some power in the lineup. The home ballpark benefits Isaac Paredes. There are visible downsides on the that the Astros will bring out in Kirby. But it doesn't really push them up the board all that much. 4.22 implied total. Middle of the board. Wouldn't knock me out of my chair if they had a 6-type run day, 7-type run day, even a couple homers. Kirby gives up a little bit of premium contact around hard hit rate, exit velocity. But the game-breaking days for the Astros, the slate-bending days, I don't think are going to be all that frequent here. Jeremy Pena, star caliber season at shortstop over his 322 plate appearances so far, continuing tremendous strides he made last year. Looks very good for 5,000, 3,500 if you're choosing to attack George Kirby with this team. Jordan Alvarez, just one of the best hitters on the planet, 35 home runs, good for power against anybody, 13.34 in the home run model. Paredes, 6.17 in the home run model, but all he's got to do is put one into that little left field corner in this ballpark, 37.29. Nice and cheap at third base for the power upside, for the on-base skills, the correlated scoring, and one of the stronger considerations when you go to this team. Taylor Trammell's interesting. He's putting good wood on the ball with that 12.6% barrel when he manages to make contact at all. 7 home runs in 189 plate appearances, a 110 WRC plus. Interesting fantasy skill set as well. Can run a little bit. Jose Altuve kind of pulled himself together. He's up to 13 home runs. Low end slash still 277 xWOB under a 305 actual. Still very low end season and on his way out the door here. But there have been flashes at least. There's been usability and he remains cheap at second base. Dalton Varsho, mix and matchy with a little bit of upside in the outfield for power every now and again from the left side, but most of that's abandoned him this year. 8 home runs in 402 plate appearances, 6.3% barrel, 37.6% hard hit. Whatever was sapping the power in Toronto, something in the water up there, he was drinking it, so didn't exactly have an outburst yet for power in Houston either. Walker at 42, 3,000, 22 homers. Had that nice start to his year, but really diminished as time went on. Still any given slate upside for sure, and nice and affordable if you're going to this team. So very playable. Cam Smith is super interesting at the end of the lineup. 16 homers, 10 stolen bases, and 11.7% barrel and 45.5% hard hits. Cam Smith would be a part of any plan I made with this Astros team if I'm going there, because among people that go to this team, he'll be lower owned. He is very cheap for his talent in the outfield. And if they pay off, it's probably going to be around somebody like that delivering on some power upside. People are more likely to go to Christian Walker there. So I really like Cam Smith at the end. Christian Vasquez is just a mix and match quality catcher. Yeah, I agree. Donovan, good value at 29, Trev. No doubt. Third base eligible. It's a guy who, again, just puts the ball in play. Super low strikeout rates. Medium walk rates, those are good enough walk rates, but it just adds up to balls in play. And he's been able to hit the ball pretty hard in some spots. So that's not a bad player. Second base eligible on FanDuel too for 2,700. I think it's George Kirby. Despite the Vegas totals, I think it's, where does the stack board have? Let me make sure I get it right. Yeah, the Astros are down here. Not showing a ton of value, but they do have a little home run upside there. But look at where the Astros ceiling numbers are too. 20th ranked out of 20 of probability of going over 8 runs. Just 19th out of 20 probability of going over 10. They're 10th ranked by Vegas total, but it's a lot more likely to go through that mean score than that those ceilings. The Mariners get a little bit more spike on their end of it. So I'm going to say upstart Mariners bats, then the Astros bats, and then Peter Lambert. I think Lambert's usable, but I don't love him at those prices. From here, by comparison to everybody on the board, some of the value range included. But we know that the Mariners have been targetable throughout the season. Vegas has them below 4, so there are, reasons to at least discuss it or consider it. Moving on, the Royals, the Angels. I don't mind the upside for either one of these offenses. Between the two starters, I'd rather have Seth Lugo on the mound than this version of Grayson Rodriguez, who's pitched to a 7.20 ERA, has at least a 4.77 xFIP under the surface, but it's just been flat out bad, walking 10%, striking out under 20% across 12 starts, 55 innings now, and just allowing a massive amount of power. So that's going to feed into guys like Jack Caglianone, known to a degree, Bobby Witt, Carter Jensen up at the top, Sal Perez with his upside, assuming he's in the lineup. Sal took another bump the other day. I think was it an elbow issue that Sal's got? Something going on with one of Sal's arms. Not great. A guy like Michael Massey, potentially a little bit underrated for his ability to put quality contact together from time to time. 9 home runs in 333 plate appearances. That's the reason he's not particularly well appreciated or particularly popular. But when we get to this team, you want to be considering guys like that from nice cheap prices at a key spot like second base. That's a very playable piece, assuming he's hitting like 5th in this lineup as projected. So definitely tons of playability around the Royals, but you want to be living mostly in that top group, obviously. Jensen, 16 homers, down to a 299 on base, just a 94 WRC plus. But if he's leading off, there's enough quality to go there. More interesting maybe on FanDuel without a necessary go-to first baseman on this team. You need catcher on DraftKings, obviously, but that renders him at a $4,700 price over there, which is challenging for the quality that we'd be getting out of Carter Jensen lately. Bobby Witt, star by any measure. Nice price on FanDuel, honestly, $3,800. That feels $200 or more too cheap. Caglianone, 14.4% barrel, 55% hard hit, 21 homers. Absolute thunder in that bat from the left side. That is a key player in going anything Royals today. If Sal's in the lineup, you definitely want to take him. Wildly inconsistent season, but the power is still very real, and that's what we'll be hunting for here against Grayson Rodriguez. Anybody that goes up to the plate has the upside for Rodriguez to fail against, but few people bring the power, especially in this lineup, that Sal Perez does, even in this form, to the plate. So he is a key piece if he's in the lineup. The bottom end leaves something to be desired around Isaac Collins, Nick Lofton, Kyle Isbell, and John Rave. A lot of same going through those guys. So any one of those guys in any given stack, even if it's 2 and a 5-man on DraftKings, maybe you can succeed. But you're just throwing darts at which one of these guys finds success today. Over 53 plate appearances, John Rave with a 117 WRC plus obviously stands out among the numbers there. 2 home runs in that small sample, 16.7% barrel. But there's not an actual lot of faith or a lot of backup to any of that. Last year in 175, John Rave slash 196, 283, 307, hit 4 home runs, stole 7 bases, 65 WRC plus. So all 4 of the guys down toward the bottom, just some back and forth filling out stacks. The quality is up toward the top there, and it's mostly right through there. On the Angels side, that 4.26 implied total, Lugo's pitched okay. 4.41 ERA, 4.52 xFIP. It's not where we want him, but he hasn't been completely melting down. He's been managing home runs despite allowing a little bit of premium contact on a relative fly ball trajectory. 134 2/3. This Royals team tends to allow pitchers even when they've given up 4 runs. Guys like Lugo, guys like Michael Wacha tend to still get their 6 innings. It doesn't equate to a quality start, obviously, but Lugo's capable. 2 years ago, 3.83 xFIP under his 3.0 ERA over 33 starts in 206 2/3. That was his best season, or best in recent memory anyway. 4.15 ERA, but a 4.53, 4.53 matching xFIP in Sierra last year. Struck out 20.5% last year. Those 2 years, I think the most noteworthy thing is the strikeouts. He's a little bit more usable around those strikeouts than the 18% that he's dipped to this season. He also lost a little bit over these last 2 seasons in walk rate. The Angels can feed those strikeouts back to him in this matchup. So I think it puts him slightly more on the board than the corpse of Rodriguez on the other side. 6,900, he's perfectly fine to throw a few darts around on DraftKings as an SP2. He's a lot less likely on FanDuel at 75 to make any kind of dent in the slate, so I wouldn't really consider him over there. Angels bats against Wade Meckler, mix and matchy in the top spot. 303, 371, and 405 is at least interesting ahead of Mike Trout and Zach Neto, or to some degree Moises Ballesteros in a minute. You get another table setter in Nolan Shanuel between Trout and Neto in this version of the lineup, which is the way it is better constructed. Love Trout in the 2 spot on 80 slate, 20 home runs, 10 stolen bases, getting on at a 388 clip. There's still a lot of Mike Trout going on there. 17.8% walk, 16.4% barrel. When he swings, when he makes contact, he has still tremendous ability to drive the ball, and he's gotten cheaper, 53.34. Big time reason to go to this team if you're considering them at all. Zach Neto's the same thing, 7.24 in the home run model. He's hit 20 and stolen 16 bases. Disappointing season overall across the full slash line for Neto, but one of the best players on this squad. Shanuel just gets on base to set the table for Neto. Ballesteros is interesting if he's in the lineup, 2,800, 2,300, a little bit of left-handed ability to put bat on ball to throw at Seth Lugo there from the cheap catcher spot. On FanDuel, I'd honestly rather have $2,300 Moises Ballesteros pretending he's their first baseman than Nolan Shanuel. Save me the $400. Give me the home run upside that Shanuel just does not really possess. If Shanuel gets on base 3 times, maybe he outscores Moises Ballesteros, but I only need 1 good plate appearance from Ballesteros. I need 2 or 3 out of Shanuel and some help from his friends. Vaughn Grissom, mixer. Josh Lowe, same thing. Denzer Guzman, same thing. Tyler Heineman, a low-end catcher filler piece. Royals bats, Angels bats, Seth Lugo. Wouldn't use Grayson Rodriguez. Jobs with the stacks board. Yeah, KC 5th on both sides by projection, 4th by value FanDuel, 7th by value DK, 9th at 16.48, but not a ton of separation there of going over probability of 8 or more runs. 9th at 7.18% probable to go over 10 runs. So, yeah, plenty of upside for the Royals makes more sense. But bats on both sides of that one if you have to. Rangers and the A's, the high point for Vegas totals, 487, 474 out at Sutter. But this is not necessarily the best night in the world to go there. Looking at the conditions, 76-degree evening. The wind is blowing out at 9 miles an hour, but to dead center. Not ideal as far as direction there. Cooler night in the Bay Area. So, those prevailing things could have a little bit of an impact, but I think more interestingly is just Gage jump. As we talked about way back at the beginning of the show, kid has just been good at limiting power. 2.22% home run rate allowed on 5.1% barrels, is allowing a fair launch angle at 15.1 degrees and 40% hard hits. So at some point, it probably does come back to bite him a little bit. But lefty, this Rangers team is not exactly exploding for power. It's not exactly a consistent run creation team. So yeah, you get upside out of the ballpark that's coming up through that Vegas total, but you're going to get all the ownership that would go along with that. Jump's also striking out 26.7. He walks too many, and that's going to be the deciding factor. If he gives away the free passes, you're probably getting the upside day for the Rangers. You're probably getting the downside day for Jump. But he induces an 11.7% swinging strike rate. He's got the talent to punch his way out of trouble. 4.46 ERA, but a 3.74 xFIP, 3.89 SIERA that are the better indicators, the better future predictors of ERA. Kid's just got talent. He ripped off his first, I forget however many starts. I'm pulling it up now. First 6 starts, he didn't allow a home run. He did see a little bit of an uptick. He's allowed 7 now in 14 starts. But the home runs that he has allowed have come in 3 games. He gave up 2 against the Dodgers on June 29th. He gave up another 2 the following game against the Marlins on July 5th, part of that Marlins surge, I believe. Back-to-back games of no power allowed, but did give up a handful of runs in a short outing against the Nationals on July 17th. Struck out 8 and walked 2, though. Allowed 3 earned runs, 4 runs total on 4 hits. So really short start. Obviously not a paying off the fantasy day, but did strike out 8. It's pretty good for that short an outing. 8 of 17 Nationals. Followed that one up with an ugly 6-run day, and that's where the rest of the home runs came from. Gave up 3 in a game out in the desert in Arizona to the Diamondbacks. Has gone 3 straight since that one without allowing a home run, though he did give up 6 earned runs again to the Tigers 2 starts ago, and that was in this home ballpark. So know that there's some clear downside. He has yet to give up more than 6, but he's given up 6 twice. He's given up 5 twice. Every other start is 2 runs or fewer. I'm at least somewhat intrigued at 7,000 on the DraftKings slate for a pitcher that is not going to be as used as he ought to be for that price as an SP2. But I would hedge with some Rangers bats and some other lineups. Kumar Rocker at 65, same kind of deal. Guys pitched to a 4.46 ERA, has a better looking 4.14 xFIP, 4.21 SIERA. These are not the numbers we want, but they're the numbers we have for this incredibly cheap pitcher. Striking out 21.4 against a not so problematic 8.7% walk rate. It amounts to a 12.68 strikeout minus walk. Again, we want 20% in that category to make you an ace. Nobody's saying he's an ace, but he's been okay at managing premium contact. He's been working his way through. He's below average across all 3+ categories. Only the sinker grades out as 3/4 of a point above average by Stuff Plus. Kid's got more pedigree than he's ever actually developed out in the show. Last year in 14 starts, 64 and a 30, had too much of a contact problem. He's cleaned that up nicely, as you can see through here. That's a big gain, even though it's amounted to only a half a home run via home run rate of gain. That would trend toward more limitation of power. It's come with slightly more actual fly ball trajectory, but he's pulled down hard hit significantly. Has a ways to go to get to good, but a lot of improvement there. A lot of improvement in the exit velocity that he was allowing. So last year, you're looking at a kid who was just finding his footing against major league talent and making some mistakes along the way and getting tattooed for it. He has cleaned a lot of that up this year, inducing an 11.8% swinging strike rate, up a half a point year over year. I think is interesting. So again, not really looking to sell too much Kumar Rocker here, but I think he's very usable, more usable than the 474 implied total against a lower end version of the A's. They are lower strikeout now with some of the power bats out of this projected lineup, but they're much lower end overall. They're a lot less threatening in this form. Kumar Rocker absolutely could get got as much as Gage Jump could get got here. It's reflected by the totals. But I wouldn't call you crazy for playing either of these pitchers on DK. I'm not particularly interested in either one on FanDuel. 8,300, I don't need Kumar Rocker, I don't think, at that price. 87, I certainly don't think we need Gage Jump at that price. He's, just, if you're going there, you could probably go down to Landon Roop against Colorado at the 8, or you could find your way to Michael King at 92, George Kirby at 94. I'm pretty confident with one bat swap. So he's borderline even usable on FanDuel. If you're looking at Rangers bats to throw against him, big-time righty power in Wyatt Langford, 13 home runs and 298 plate appearances. Mix and match quality through that slash line, but much better than that under the surface. 209 ISO, a 118 WRC plus. Needs to find the consistency of premium contact again. Just 37.9% hard hit, 7.9% barrel. That's down year over year in a moderate sample from last year. 573 plate appearances, 22 homers, 22 stolen bases, and excellent premium contact numbers. We get back to this level, and this is going to skyrocket. So that's a very good player to take from the right side, throw at this lefty. Corey Seager, lefty, doesn't do him any favors. He has a bad season underway. 200, 301, 391, 94 WRC plus. Still a very interesting X-Wob under the surface, and when he has contacted the ball, it's been in a big way. So if I'm taking any lefty out of this lineup, it's still Corey Seager. Ezekiel Duran, mix and match quality talent overall, plays a bunch of positions for a fair price. Very usable, but not a priority in any way outside of just if you're already going to the squad, you take him along for the ride. Brendan Nimmo, solid for premium contact upside, good on base skills. That's a very interesting player, 343 weighted on base, and I keep pointing out a 370 X-Wob under the surface. So, again, another lefty that I would go to if I'm going to this Rangers team. But then you get into some of the righties that are stacked in here. Jake Berger's got okay power upside. He's hit 19 on the season, but he's getting on at a 293 clip. Doesn't exactly do much else than hit the occasional long ball. Strikes out a lot, doesn't really walk. That could feed into Gage Jump's upside. Justin Foskew's put a few interesting batted ball events together, but 7 home runs and 161 plate appearances, an okay total, but 253, 317. 459 is interesting in the slugging department. 205 is interesting in the ISO. Has a 313 X-Wob under that 336 actual. So pretty good reason to believe that that's some overperformance going on. Elias Diaz, just a mixer at catcher. Cam Coley's got speed, but hasn't done anything yet in the show. Nicky Lopez, a slap hitter buried at the bottom of the lineup. Not a lot of appeal there. I think this team probably going to be over-owned today. I think you let the field have their fair share, take some across a bunch of lineups. If you're building 5 lineups, I would take one of these teams in one of them at least. But that's probably less than most people would take out of this game in 5 lineups. On the A side, we're really focused on Soderstrom and all his upside at that obvious price tag, 19 home runs. But even through that, 245, 337, 474, a 123 WRC plus. Very good at creating runs, a big part of the machine here, but not the guy who's appropriate to be carrying the team. He's nobody's best player. 329 X-Wob under that 350 actual exposes some of the overperformance. But he's limited strikeouts more effectively this year. He is drawing more walks. That is a very good player, don't get me wrong. Jeff McNeil, just a slap hitter up at the top of the lineup. Set the table maybe for Tyler Soderstrom, but he's done nothing special with his 360 plate appearances this year. 79 WRC plus. Jacob Wilson, hit tool focus, 4,400, 2,900, slashing 269, 299, 392. Again, nothing really special going on. Low strikeout, put the ball in play type. I'd rather have him ahead of Tyler Soderstrom than hitting behind him. Carlos Cortez was more interesting early in the season, is still getting on at a 333 clip, a 107 WRC plus. One of the more playable pieces here, 35 in the outfield, 27, but ultimately just another outfielder. Zach Geloff is interesting, outfield eligible on DraftKings, second base and third base on FanDuel. Second also on DraftKings is where I'd want him. 280, 331, 502, 13 homers, 8 steals from a former 2020 type talent. That's an interesting right-handed bat to throw into the mix here. I don't mind the upside. He's probably your second highest priority player on this team. Lawrence Butler, incredibly inconsistent lefty to throw into the mix. Another former 2020 talent, but really going through it over 363 plate appearances. At least has found an interesting enough 45.2% hard hit rate to focus on. Jonah Heim, solid option at catcher at 41 if you're already going to this team. No real reason to go there. Otherwise, 11 homers on the board. Henry Bolte hasn't really put it together. 5 home runs, 14 steals at 335 on base, but just a 95 WRC plus. Hasn't found any kind of consistency in the show, but has the skill set to hit for a little bit of power, steal the occasional base. So not a bad DFS option as we're mixing and matching pieces. And then Donovan Walton, just a low-end guy down toward the bottom, though. 282, 369, 443, a 130 WRC plus over what is now a growing sample of 151 plate appearances. Low strikeout, reasonable walk rate. All right, but doesn't exactly strike the ball well. All right. I do still rank the bats above the pitching, right? But know that I think the correct way to attack this would be if you're going to undercut the bats and maybe play up the pitching a little bit for value. But ranking-wise, it's probably Rangers, A's, DraftKings pricing only Gage Jump than Kumar Rocker. I wouldn't use either guy on FanDuel. Hey, wouldn't is a strong word, but they lack appeal in any real sense on FanDuel. $5:47. We're doing all right on time. We'll have the site updated as soon as the show is over. A lot of these lineups are in. A couple more just came in, including that Royals lineup. Nick Lofton cleanup hitter today. Why not? I wasn't available to hit cleanup for the Royals today, so they went with Nick Lofton. Collins, Rafe, Rojas, Isbel. Rojas does nothing to change that ugliness at the bottom of that lineup. Massey, again, somewhat interesting in the 5 spot, and you're focused on the top 3 now if you're going Royals, so a little diminished. No Sal Perez in the lineup for KC today. That also sucks for the Dynasty team. Angels lineup, got Trout, Neto. I think that's basically the exact setup we had. Brewers, Dodgers, no lineups in for this one yet. Robert Gasser pitching somewhat effectively. A 4.57 ERA is not great. 4.37 xFIP, 4.14 SIERA. It's nice that they're getting better as you get toward the more predictable numbers for future ERA. But he does have a tidy 6.3% walk rate against an adequate 21.3%. Strikeout over 67 innings, 13 starts. Really has been good at limiting premium contact, despite some fly ball trajectory that has led to a few incidental home runs. I think the thing to focus on in his contact numbers, only 6% barrels, 33% hard hits, and 86.8 miles an hour of exit velocity on average. So these are entirely just incidental home runs that happen to get out in the right ballpark, the right confluence of circumstances. But demonstrable ability right now anyway, to limit premium contact. If anybody can find it against him, though, it's guys like Shohei Ohtani, Andy Paez, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, Teoscar Hernandez, and so on and so forth. So Dodgers very much in play, 4.32 implied total. They're never much more than halfway down the board, and certainly not against Robert Gasser. Brewers, probably a more problematic option DFS-wise, 3.27 implied total. They do have a little bit of a spike for ceiling just because they're such a good run creation team that they'll have their games where they do bend the day against Yoshi Yamamoto, but you're getting a lot through the mean where it's lower end, 2 to 5 run type day for the Brewers. He's striking out 23.8 against a 6% walk rate. That amounts to a 17.8 strikeout -1, just shy of where we want to call him an ace, but pitching to a 2.65 ERA. Nice, believable xFIP and SIERA in the mid 3s. Just a 0.89 whip, too, is utterly tremendous. 9.4 degree average launch, inducing a lot of weak and medium low trajectory contact. Real limiting effect on the power upside for the Brewers that are already a good, not great home run hitting team, I think. They do it a lot more, as we talk about all season long, through sequencing. They do have some power bats, like Jake Bauer, certainly. Jackson Chourio is overloaded with power. Garrett Mitchell hits the ball really hard, but doesn't deliver home runs for it. Only a 153 ISO. Incongruent. 8 home runs, 153 ISO with that 12.8% barrel, 50.9% hard hit. That is a more interesting player than he's been, but he's been very good. 111 WRC plus, nice 348 XWOB under that 335 actual to show the underperformance. Andrew Vaughn, if he's in the lineup against the righty, very interesting on any given slate. Has third base eligibility on DK, which is great because you can go third base Andrew Vaughn, outfield Jake Bowers, and another Matt Olson, let's say, at first base with this team now. So that's a nice way to be able to put the Brewers together. First base only on FanDuel for Vaughn, but who cares over there? 2,800. He's at 5 home runs, slashing 300, 391, 465, doing Andrew Vaughn things up there over 248. Always underappreciated player. Kid can hit, can get on base. He has a little power in that bat. Always interested, always cheap. 45 for Christian Yelich, 31. 8 homers, 10 steals in a downturn of the season for Yelich, which is unfortunate. I mean, as good as the Brewers have been, imagine, full-fledged season out of Christian Yelich would be even better. Can turn it on in a moment's notice, though, and might be huge going into the fall with them. William Contreras, down lineup now, 4,200, 3,000. 11 home runs, lackluster 257, 328, 377 slash line now. A little disappointing against that 330 xWOBA and what our expectations for this player would be, but still extremely playable, and the price has come down now at catcher. Luis Lara, Joey Ortiz, David Hamilton, mix and match pieces down toward the bottom. If you're choosing to target Yoshi Yamamoto with Brewers bats, do yourself a favor and use the top 6 if it's those guys. Dodgers, Ohtani's obvious, 13.38 in the home run model. Nobody else above the magic number for home run upside, and that's a little bit diminished even for Ohtani. He's at 27. Nobody else has more than 20, but Pajes has 19. 15 going to Freddie Freeman. Mookie Betts pulling in at 15, 11 going to Teoscar. No Max Muncy in the starting lineup here. You may or may not see him. Usually you'll get into the game for a pinch hitting appearance. I think he had a pinch hit home run yesterday, if not mistaken. But you're obviously not starting him if he's not in the lineup. If he is in the lineup, fire away. I have no issues playing Max against a Robert Gasser. Teoscar Hernandez, major source of premium contact and power over the years from the right side. 11 home runs in a diminished season of 334 plate appearances, half season basically this year. Still makes interesting contact, but not like elite level contact like it used to be. But again, any given slate upside, particularly against a left-handed pitcher. Gasser, though, has been good at inducing those lazy fly balls. Big, high, looping fly ball, can of corn type trajectory out of Gasser. Miguel Rojas, Enrique Hernandez, and Hunter Fiducia down lineup for the Dodgers. Anybody who's down there is just bolt-on piece for a stack. Your quality is always up there for the Dodgers among these superstars, except when if Kyle Tucker is hitting 7th, obviously. This goes Yamamoto, Dodgers bats, Gasser, Brewers bats. Gasser, not crazy for value. 7,200 on DraftKings works. 78 on FanDuel. You're probably not going to need him from there. You'd probably rather take your shot with Seth Lugo at 75. Certainly Landon Roop at 8 in the next game we're about to talk about. He's on the board, but unlikely on FanDuel. He's much more of a piece at 72, I think, on DK. Closing things out, Rockies and Giants. Hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel. Past the 2-hour mark on the show. Handful of people still here hanging out. Been rambling my way through this one, I feel like. Friday show, though. That's what we're here for, right? Hopefully things are going well out there for you guys. Check out the pitching picks contest. Scrolling across the board right now. Enter with a comment after the show. You need somebody who's going to book a quality start, which is 6 innings of 3 or fewer earned runs, plus 8 or more strikeouts. Today, I took Gavin Williams off the board. 1 pick per person per day has to come from this slate, so on and so forth. You can use the same pick as one another, though. Both guys who have one on the board already used Schoenberg the other day. Trive Duarte likes Zach Veen as the last man in. That's not a bad option. Is he in the lineup? He is in the lineup, 7th. 2,300, 2,500. That's a kid with a lot of skills. Has a home run on the board in his first 3 plate appearances this year. Mashed a couple pitches, it looks like. Nice, cheap outfielder with a lot of prospect pedigree. You're going to see some wild inconsistency as he comes up. He's going up against a pitcher who, by and large, keeps the ball down and limits home run quality. So that's why I'm a little skeptical about the Rocks and their upside. So far this season, Landon Roop, shaky as he's been with that 10.9% walk rate, which is where any of his problems typically come from. 4.22 ERA, has a nice, tidy, nice clean 3.88 xFIP. 4.19 Sierra matches more the ERA. Good future predictor. 12.6 strikeout minus walk, not ideal, but I'll focus on the xFIP because I want to. He keeps the ball down. 9.7 degree average launch, low trajectory, a lot of ground balls, a lot of low line drives. 4.1% barrel rate, and just outstanding at limiting hard hits and exit velocity. 29% hard hits is utterly elite, guys. 86.1 miles an hour of exit velocity. If this kid figures out the walks, he is a ace type pitcher. Lacking maybe for strikeout upside. But I've done this with several Giants pitchers because they've just got a lot of guys in this mold. but he is a Logan Webb type. It's just what he does. Needs to figure out the walks to actually get to anywhere near that level, and you'd still be talking about several tiers down from that very good starter I just mentioned. But he's got those kind of attributes. So if nothing else here, yeah, he might give away a few free passes to the Rockies, but this Rockies lineup, accepting Zach Veen's 0 so far, it's only 3 plate appearances, the rest of these Rockies are walking at just a 7.2% rate, bolstered by 10.8 out of Connor Norby, who's also striking out 30% of the time. These Rockies are not properly set up to really go after that walk rate. They're more likely to feed some strikeout toward Landon Root. That's what I think makes Root really interesting at that 75 on DraftKings, and would use at 8,000 on FanDuel, because I think the Giants have a reasonable shot at that 399 implied total. Go put one on Kyle Freeland here. Not a monster DFS day by any means, but 5-6 runs, have a day, go get the win for Landon Root, who unexpectedly for some DFS people comes through with a quality game here, projects out nicely on our board. I think he's very usable from right there. He is 1 1/2 tiers removed from the top of the board. Nice cheap price going up against the very gettable Colorado Rockies, who do not do the one thing well that you need to beat Landon Root. Kyle Freeland on the other side at 55.67 comes with an 18.9% strikeout against 5.1% walks. Neither of those numbers is good, but neither of those numbers, the walk rate is very good. The strikeout rate is not good, leading to a 13.75%, just kind of a strikeout minus walk. It does help explain away the 6.63 ERA, though. 4.21 xFIP, 4.18 SIERA are more like what he's been pitching like, but he allows a lot of premium contact. 10.8% barrel, 42.5% hard hit, 4.13% very realistic downside home run mark. So he actually feeds a little bit of power into the Giants lineup. Even lefty-lefty, Rafi Devers over the magic number. Willie Adames pulling a 9.39. Bryce Eldridge, even lefty-lefty, 9.18. Eldridge has 12 home runs, solid 340 on base, an excellent 115 WRC plus, 347 xWOBA, and some great premium contact numbers so far in his 318 plate appearance deep career. Young-Hoo Lee, good at putting the ball in play, getting to first base, set the table for the power bats that follow. Victor Bericotto at 2,800 has some interesting plate appearances under his belt. 4 home runs in 67 chances, 12.8% barrel. Throw at Kyle Freeland from the right side. Why not? Levis Pasabe has hit 3 home runs. Maybe he is the guy that I was thinking of the other day. 103 WRC plus. I told you guys yesterday, I realized it was, or 2 days ago, I realized it was Orlevis Martinez I was thinking of. Christian Koss, Drew Gilbert, Andrew Neisner. Actually, Koss and Gilbert just mix and matchy. No real quality out of either one of those guys. Neisner's kind of interesting. Going back a ways, back in 2023, 10 home runs and 243 plate appearances. He's got the occasional long ball in like a Kyle Higashioka cheap catcher, dead min price on DraftKings kind of a way against a shaky lefty right-handed bat. Doesn't have any kind of consistency of batted ball events, but that season had a 7.9% barrel, 40.9% hard hit. Unless he's completely forgotten how to do that, I don't see any reason to not at least consider him against Kyle Freeland. Honestly, that's even a somewhat interesting one-off on DraftKings. That's a zero, it's a home run or bust type of a play. He's very unlikely to do anything else at the plate, but maybe you get that one good batted ball event for a guy who will not be owned. It's an interesting way to round out the Giants lineup if he happens to be in it. Longleaf, appreciate it, buddy. Thank you for saying. Longleaf said, great content, informative. That's what we're here for. We do try. There's a lot of talking. It's a long show. You got to listen to me ramble. But I do like to think that I throw out some pretty good nuggets of information out there along the way. So hopefully you guys are able to pick those up and filter out the noise. Rockies lineup, Jake McCarthy at the top. No Hunter Goodman is a big ding for any kind of quality here. So I would say another team that's going to take a knock through that upside column. They're probably no longer that likely to go over 8 or 10 runs with that big bat out of the lineup. You still do get Mickey Moniak with some power upside. TJ Rumfield, Troy Johnston hit for a little bit of average, 294, 283 average, 371, 348 on base. Both guys capable of creating a run, but without the big thumper here, there is a little bit less of a threat. That said, as we just discussed, Zach Veen's an interesting left-handed rookie with some power upside with the ability to swipe a bag as well. Connor Norby has not realized his potential, but does have the ability somewhere in there to find interesting contact. Only 4 home runs and a 200, 313, 317 slash line over 240 this year, though. Ezekiel Tovar's been dead at the plate all season long. Brett Sullivan's a mix and matchy kind of a catcher. Willie Castro is just a utility man that you can move around to different positions. That said, 335 on base, 13 homers, 8 steals. You're more looking for Willie when they're playing their home games at Coors Field. But if you're going to this team in a pitcher-friendly park against a pitcher who doesn't allow very much, Willie would be in the mix because he's base hit focused. So you're not worried about Roop's ability to take the home run ball away. He's not a big-time home run threat, despite those oddball 13 home runs that he's hit. I like the Rockies less than I did at the beginning of the show. I like the Guardians less than I did at the beginning of the show. Like a lot of the pitching that's available on this slate. I think it's a robust pitching board, guys. Oh, I forgot to round this out. Landon Roop, particularly on DraftKings, but I think he's just interesting across the board. Giants bats. I guess Kyle Freeland. The Rockies bats fell off the table with no Hunter Goodman. Jumping over to the pitching board one last time before we punch out of here, get the site updated. Did the Giants lineup come in? That wasn't the confirm that we had, was it? Larry says it's ugly. I trust Larry. Whew. All right. We do get Neisner, which is nice. We get Rafi Eldridge back-to-back there. Jonah Cox in the leadoff role, just because he's right-handed, I would assume. Cox is speedy, if I'm not mistaken, right? Isn't he blazing fast, stolen base, craziness kind of guy? Yeah. Jonah Cox in 235 plate appearances down on the farm this season, primarily in Double-A as a 24-year-old, so bear that in mind, was slashing 415, 468, 647. So basically getting on base half the time over 235 plate appearances. Had stolen 34 bases, had 7 home runs on the board, a 192 WRC plus, a 408 xWOBA under a 483 actual. I don't think he's actually like the best player on the planet, as those numbers might indicate. I think he's just some overperformance in a moderate sample from a kid who's playing a level below where he ought to be at the very best. But that's not actually an ugly, uninteresting option to have for 2,300 in that leadoff role. What I do have to do is correct that projection, though, because that is not the correct projection for him. So that's coming off of a it's feeding that big spike. It's not enough plate appearances, obviously, in there. This is just the combined projections that feed the back end. There's not like one thing that's really standing out that needs to be. I just need to give him more meat on the bone overall to normalize that projection. This happens with speed guys sometimes in short sample on the back end, where they'll have overperformed something, like the 4 stolen bases are already beyond what that projection was. So that breaks things in the model a little bit. So I just need to normalize his back end, and I'll do that before I update the site. That's like Tyler Tolbert has the same issue going on on some days. So yeah, but he is interesting for 2,300 leading off ahead of the 2 power bats, ahead of Victor Berricoto a couple spots later, who people probably aren't going to be all that aware of. So actually, I think this is a more interesting version of the Giants lineup because we get Jonah Cox in that leadoff spot. Berricoto hitting cleanup, and you still get Neisner. So like, if you're on DraftKings particularly, Deadman price catcher, little separation there, but it's not deadly bad. Oh, these guys are both first base. That sucks. That blows it up. That does suck. So maybe you're 3-manning it then It's less appealing, but like 1, 2, 3 right there with like Eldridge, Berricoto, and Neisner. And you're only paying $28.67 a piece, $8,600 for the 3-man. That's a reasonable enough way to attack Kyle Freeland there. But I liked it a lot better if I could get both those guys. Over here, you're like 1, 2, 3 there. And then you need Neisner less. So I'd probably just play the connected Berricoto there. $26.75 a piece, $10.7 total for the 4-man. Maybe more appealing as a group on FanDuel that way. But yeah, Cox is actually interesting up there. Let me get out of here, though, so that I can play that, so that I can normalize that projection for him and update the site. Larry says, remember that's PCL for Cox in AAA. Yeah, but only 52 of those plate appearances were at AAA. One of the home runs, 7 stolen bases, /468, 519, 660 over that stretch. But 183 of the 235 plate appearances were at AA. But yeah, good note. No doubt. You always want to call out PCL or PCA. He's quite good. Let me punch out, gang. Let me get the site updated. Most of these lineups are in. Got an hour and change to get lineups built. So check out rotoscouts.com. Meech, you don't want either of those pitchers. Grayson or Freeland, you don't want either of those guys. Those are 2 of the very worst options on the board. I think I'd rather save money from those guys and take my shot with stock against a diminished Nationals lineup. You've got just as much chance of upside. But yeah, you need to get better than that. Alvarez is reasonable at 62 against the Mets. I would maybe take my shot with Rocker at 65. Gasser certainly at 62. Lugo, or the guys we actually talked about from the bargain bin, like Gage Jump, Landon Root, with some more tangible upside. I don't really like Brandon Pfaadt in that conversation. But I think you need more meat on the bone. These 2 guys are really more targets for bats. Between the 2, it is Kyle Freeland against a lower end, I think, Giants lineup. And he's given you slightly more than this version of Grayson Rodriguez. But I'm really not looking to get either one of those pitchers. Meets laughing. Fun way to end the show. That's a great note to punch out on. Good luck out there tonight, gangs. Have great weekends, by the way. We'll see you again on Monday for shows, content through the weekend as usual. Good luck out there tonight at Roop or Fat Roop. Big time Landon Roop. I don't like Brandon Pfaadt in that position. I don't think his mean projection is not incorrect where he's projected, but he does not offer you much ceiling because he doesn't strike anybody out. And he's in a lot of trouble against that Braves lineup if things go to plan for the Braves. They're the top ranked stack. So I'm not looking for Brandon Pfaadt. Big time looking at Landon Roop against Colorado as a value option. So strongly favor Roop in that question for Rabbit Hole. And for real this time, that's how we're going to end the show. Good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. Share those results when you do at Rotoscouts on Twitter or in Premium Discord, which is linked down there along with links to the website. Check out the Pitching Picks contest. Get yourself a free week anytime. Promo code TRYME, all one word, capital T, capital M, as scrolling across your screen right now. Thank you guys so much. You absolutely rock out there. This was a fun one. A lot of talking. Sound like the Micro Machines man sometime. Nobody beats the Wiz. See you guys.